Good afternoon. I apologize for the delay. We've had several different briefings happening in council upstairs, but I believe we have established a quorum. To my right, Councilwoman Janie Blackwell. To my left, Councilman Heenan, Councilman Brian O'Neill, Councilwoman Chevelle Parker, and Councilman Kenyatta Johnson. Having established a quorum, the Committee on Appropriations will now come to order. Will the clerk read the title of all the bills, please?
Bill number 190854, an ordinance amending Bill number 190152, entitled An Ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2020 through 2025 inclusive. Bill number 190855, an ordinance amending Bill number 190153, entitled An Ordinance to adopt fiscal 2020 capital budget. Bill number 190856, an ordinance authorizing transfers and appropriations for fiscal year 2020 from general fund, all certain or all office departments, boards, and commissions, the grants revenue fund, certain or all city offices, departments, boards, and commissions to the general fund, departments, boards, or commissions, the water fund, certain or all city offices, departments, boards, and commissions, the special gasoline tax fund, certain or all offices, departments, boards, and commissions, and the aviation fund. Bill number 190857, an ordinance authorizing transfers and appropriations for fiscal year 2019 from the general fund to the grants revenue fund, the aviation fund to the water fund and general fund, and all other boards and commissions, the aviation fund to certain or all city offices, departments, boards, and commissions, and the water residual fund, all city offices, boards, and commissions.
Thank you. We will start with the administration with Marissa, and then I've realized that the airport folks have to go, so any questions for the airport, and then of course my council colleagues will have independent questions for the different departments. And I know at one point, Marissa, you may have to step out for a little bit and come back, but so let's start with you. We're not hearing you. I'm sorry. It's still not loud enough.
A little higher, please.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Sanchez and members of the Appropriations Committee.
You know we're messing with you because it's your first time, right? Hazing you a little bit now.
All right.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon.
It's still not, hold on.
The taxpayers' dollars at work.
No, we're hazing her. It's her first time. We want to make her more nervous. You want to go like this to it? Yeah, it's a little bit. Put it up a little bit.
All right, here we go. Good afternoon, Councilmember Sanchez and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Marissa Gorin-Waxman, and I serve as the Budget Director for the City of Philadelphia. I appear before you today to offer testimony on Bill numbers 190854, 190855, 190856, and 190857. These 4 bills reflect the current fiscal conditions of the city, our expectations for the future, and our choices about how best to manage limited resources. The City of Philadelphia ended FY19 with a higher than budgeted general fund balance, in large part due to increased revenue collections from the notoriously volatile business income and receipts tax. We should all be pleased with this improvement in our finances, but also acknowledge that we are starting in a vulnerable place, with a weak tax base, a community with many unmet needs, a high level of fixed costs, a pension fund that is still less than 50% funded, and a recession on the horizon. Although our fund balance is still just over half the amount the Government Finance Officers Association recommends, with this added flexibility, we've chosen to allocate funds to both immediate service needs, including programs to reduce violence, and to our long-term fiscal health. Given that we cannot count on those revenue increases to recur entirely, we have focused our investments on those with maximum impact. Bill 190857 is the FY19 year-end transfer ordinance, and it proposes transferring appropriations within the general fund of $7.9 million, the grants revenue fund of $111.2 million, the water fund of $5.1 million, and the aviation fund of $130,000. This ordinance is needed to transfer appropriations to those agencies and expenditure classes where shortages have occurred and will allow the proper recording of the final fiscal year 2019 obligations. For the general fund, the largest of the shortages to be addressed is $14.9 million to the fire department to fully fund payroll, followed by payroll shortages at the sheriff's office of $3 million, $923,000 in the Department of Public Health, $510,000 in licenses and inspections, $379,000 for the city commissioners, $365,000 at the free library, and $112,000 at the Office of Property Assessment. Some of these were wholly or partially offset by internal transfers from other classes within the department. All other payroll shortages were less than $90,000. The ordinance also includes transfers within and between departments with no net impacts. In addition to the shortages, the FY19 year-end transfer ordinance includes $2.2 million to the 1st Judicial District per the zero growth agreement between the city and the courts, which requires the city to appropriate any surplus in the FJD general fund budget and a share of the revenue they generate to be sent to the administrative office of the Pennsylvania courts. The higher than anticipated fund balance also enabled additional investments in the city's long-term fiscal health and economic stability through this ordinance, including allocating $10 million for the Housing Trust Fund, $20 million for a recession reserve, $20 million for the Economic Stimulus Fund to support commercial corridor cleaning and inclusive growth, and $46.9 million in pay-as-you-go capital projects to avoid borrowing costs and address immediate needs. I'll outline those capital payments in a few moments. Bill 190856, the FY20 mid-year transfer ordinance, proposes $66 million in additional spending made possible by the higher than expected FY19 fund balance. The new funding includes $15 million to the fire department to meet payroll needs and purchase EMS supplies and firefighter gear, $14 million to provide treatment to those with hepatitis C in prison facilities, over $10 million for affordable housing and redevelopment of vacant land, including $5 million for the Housing Trust Fund, just over $5 million for the Land Bank, and $855,000 for the Office of Homeless Services. There's more than $5 million to support anti-violence programs through the Managing Director's Office, Licenses and Inspection, and the Streets Department, $4.7 million for independent offices, including City Council, the City Controller, and the District Attorney's Office, $4.4 million to the Office of Technology to support cybersecurity, stabilization of One Philly, security cameras, and other projects. $4.4 million to the Department of Public Property to make a payment required under the Gallery Mall Tax Increment Financing Agreement, additional costs for maintenance at the triplex, and adding new sites to the property maintenance contract. There's $2.3 million for the Community College of Philadelphia for dual enrollment and programs agreed to during contract negotiations. $2.1 million to cover increases due to exempt staff raises granted in July 2019 to various departments. $1.5 million for Vision Zero and other public works projects funded by the title registration fee, which must be used for traffic safety. And $435,000 for initiatives in the resilience area. Other initiatives supported include Philly Counts in conjunction with the 2020 census, time clocks and software for parks and recreation, funding for enhanced budget communications and engagement, lead remediation at playgrounds, emergency management, and insurance premiums. In addition to the new funding, the ordinance realigns funding between classes within departments and between departments. This additional funding in FY20 will meet critical needs identified by council, city managers, and leadership, and the public. On the capital budget side, Bills 190854 and 190855, we're adjusting the FY20 capital budget and the FY20 through 25 capital program to reflect three categories of changes. First, the award of a $12 million Tiger grant and a $2 million CMAQ grant that occurred after the FY20 capital budget and program were introduced. Second, to liquidate about $3 million in encumbrances for funding that was not needed so that it can be allocated to other projects. And finally, to adjust for the $46.9 million in pay-as-you-go capital funding allocated in the FY19 year-end transfer ordinance. The $46.9 million in capital investments reflects a mix of projects, ones that had already been planned for in the budget with borrowed funds, like new printers for central duplicating. We'd planned to borrow $250,000 next year, but now the machines can be purchased in one fell swoop while avoiding interest in debt issuance fees. It includes projects not included in the approved capital budget and program to date, like emergency library branch improvements. Planned projects where funding needs exceeded the amount already budgeting. These last dollar funds allow us to complete a project without additional borrowing. For example, $6 million for the Department of Revenue's integrated tax system replacement, which was budgeted with a placeholder before bids were received. And finally, enabling us to accelerate projects such as supporting $12 million in vehicle purchases. Accelerating vehicle purchases results in a younger fleet with less time spent in the shop for repairs and more time in service, helping to shorten response times for fire and police, increasing on-time trash pickup, and many other service improvements our communities deserve. Thank you for your input and insights that aided the development of these proposals. We appreciate Council's ongoing efforts to balance support for immediate needs and the city's fiscal health with limited resources. I respectfully request that you report these bills out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and I further request that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading at the next session of council. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before this committee today and would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Additionally, representatives from all departments involved with the transfers are available as well. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned when we began the session, the folks from the airport have to go. If there are any airport-related questions, if not, then we can release them. No? We're good? Okay, so the airport folks, I know that they had to go. And then I'm going to... You have something for the airport? There's no questions, so we can move on.
Okay.
The chair recognizes Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, and thank you for your testimony. These appropriation meetings are extremely important for not just, council members having the opportunity to hear testimony from the administration and the various departments and how we function and what we're transferring for what reasons. One of the ongoing issues that we've been dealing with in the city of Philadelphia, not just recently, but over the past couple decades, is public safety when it comes to our enforcement officers in the Department of L&I. And, I had an appropriations bill amendment that I was going to submit today, but instead, I'm asking for a commitment from the administration, the finance department, and the commissioner of L&I to make a commitment to see that we have the proper staffing levels for our enforcement officers that are out on the street protecting people and protecting property. We are not in a position to change what we do in policies as we do as working with the departments and this legislative body and take away the focus of our core mission of L&I, and that's to keep people safe and out of harm's danger for losing life with these most recent collapses. We have an uptick in development. We have increase in permits over the next couple of years moving forward because there is work in the pipeline over the next several years. And I don't feel that, I think that we can share in the same vision and making sure that we have the proper staffing levels. Our L&I department are overworked, they're understaffed, and I don't want them to lose focus. So I would like the commitment from the mayor's office, finance department, and the L&I commissioner to sit down and go over what is needed to budget that in the FY21 budget for next year as we prepare to do so, to ensure that I think a lot of concerns that this body, myself, and the city has been talking about for some time. I think the time is now, and I'm asking for a commitment to do so we can share that vision and make sure that not just that we have a meeting, that we discuss it, and that we have a plan of action in implementing the increase of enforcement officers on the street. So my question to you is, can you commit to pulling together the administration and coming up with a plan and putting together a budget as we move forward to next year's budget process?
Yes, we will commit to meeting with you and developing a plan for FY21 around that. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll put your letter to the administration on the record as part of the file. Okay, thank you. With that, Marissa, I'm going to release you, and I'm going to call the next panel on our other amendment. I don't know if Councilwoman Parker, did you want to say something before we get started with, or you want to let folks say?
No, they've been waiting.
Okay, yes, I want to get through them. Okay, so we have, so Marissa, if you want to, we have written testimony from the Department of Commerce, but I want to call PIDC, E-Consult, Ethan Connor Ross, and then the panels will go as follows. People should set up and queue up. So we can go through them. So after Ann from PIDC and E-Consult, the next panel will be Beth McConnell, Rob Wonderling, Donovan Sterling West from the Chamber of Commerce, and Jeff Hornstein.
Hey, Ann.
You can go up to the witness table also. Proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ann Bovaird-Nevins, and I am PIDC's Chief Strategy and Communications Officer. I'm here today to provide testimony regarding PIDC's participation in the PHL Taking Care of Business program funded by Bill number 190857. PIDC is a nonprofit organization created by the city and the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce in 1958, and we focus on driving growth to every corner of Philadelphia. I would like to thank Councilmember Parker for her longstanding support of commercial corridors and the neighborhood businesses that will benefit from the $10 million funding provided by this bill. Her 9th district is home to some of the most dynamic and diverse shopping areas in the city, such as North 5th Street, Rising Sun Avenue, and Ogons Avenue. The businesses on these corridors are the drivers of the local economy. They create jobs, build wealth for entrepreneurs, and provide critical goods and services to neighborhood residents. Clean and safe commercial corridors help to stabilize the surrounding residential areas and create jobs and taxes for the city. Providing enhanced services to these corridors is a smart investment. PIDC has been pleased to participate with the Commerce Department and Council in the initial pilot of this program, and we look forward to working with the administration and City Council to expand the numbers of corridors that are benefiting from these critical services. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure.
Copy, sir. Sir.
Apologize. Good afternoon, everyone, committee members. My name is Ethan Connor Ross, and I'm a vice president at E-Consult Solutions, Inc., a Philadelphia-based consulting firm specializing in economics and public policy. Our firm has been asked by the council to study the economic and community impacts of the proposed Philadelphia Taking Care of Business program. Our study focused on 3 categories of benefits from the proposed program. The first is the economic activity associated with the direct and spillover economic impact, employee earnings, and tax revenue from the program investment. The second is the quality of life impacts on the neighborhoods and business corridors through increased attractiveness, improved public health, and public safety. And the third is the economic opportunity benefits from building the workforce development pipeline for Philadelphia residents, strengthening and supporting CDCs and community-based organizations, and building the capacity of small and minority-owned businesses that perform the cleaning services. And my testimony will briefly review the benefits of the program in each of these areas. Economic benefits were modeled in our study based on an anticipated program budget of $10 million in year 1. The majority of the budget is expected to be spent on program operations rather than administration. Most notably, crew members are expected to earn $15 an hour for a 25-hour work week. This means that the majority of the program budget will go to Philadelphia residents in the form of earnings for their work.
These direct expenditures for workers, procurement of supplies, and administration all have spillover effects within the city economy. These effects come in two types: indirect effects that capture increases in activity across the supply chain, and induced effects that capture increases in activity when employee earnings are recirculated as household spending. Economic modeling is used to estimate the size of these effects as they ripple across the Philadelphia economy. Our study estimates that a $10 million program investment produces an additional $7 million in spillover activity for a total economic impact of $17 million. This $17 million is comprised of $11 million in direct and spillover salary and benefits for workers, and another $6 million in local business income. This activity also grows the tax base, bringing a portion of the investment directly back to the city's coffers. While the activity of the city and community nonprofits is tax exempt, the program will generate private sector employee earnings and business activity that grow the tax base for the city wage tax, sales tax, and business taxes. Annual tax revenue from these sources is estimated at $425,000. It's also important to note that these calculations consider only a $10 million investment by the city. Additional funding from private and/or state sources and subsequent investment in future years would have this same multiplier effect, producing additional benefits through a public-private partnership. The corridors and businesses that benefit from this program are the lifeblood of communities across Philadelphia. Our study found that business corridors in neighborhoods outside of Center City account for 173,000 private sector jobs, more than a quarter of the private sector employment in the city. Importantly, these jobs are driven by small, locally owned, and diverse businesses. More than half of the city's registered MWDBE firms are located on or adjacent to a neighborhood business corridor. When business corridors are cleaned in a systematic way, these businesses see a reduction in their cleaning costs. More importantly, the increased attractiveness of the corridor makes the experience more pleasant, which ultimately means more customers and more revenue for these small, local, and diverse businesses. In addition, academic research has demonstrated a clear connection between blight and litter mitigation and important quality of life outcomes for neighborhoods. Recent research from Columbia University and the Urban Institute has connected blight to a range of public health outcomes, including chronic illness, mental health issues, and opportunities to build social capital. In addition, a team led by researchers at the University of Pennsylvania established a linkage between blight and public safety, including crime and gun violence, as well as residents' perception of their safety. Efforts to improve conditions on the business corridors will deliver a range of quality of life benefits to neighborhood residents. Another important objective for the program is to create a workforce development pipeline for city residents. Members of the cleaning crews will not only earn $15 an hour, but will have the opportunity to acquire job skills that will help them advance to new employment opportunities. This model has demonstrated success in other locations. Clean Slate is a block cleaning program in Chicago that's been operating for more than a decade with a focus on finding permanent job opportunities for its participants. The program reported in the most recent fiscal year that retention for these permanent and long-term placements was more than 70%, showing that the program can lead to transformative change. Importantly, as participants move on to permanent opportunities, new spots are opened in the pipeline for more participants. In addition, this investment will help build capacity for private cleaning firms that will perform the work. This flow of business will enable small and diverse firms to increase their staffing capabilities, enabling them to take advantage of more private sector opportunities. This process seeds more activity into the private economy. In conclusion, each of these elements helps to build a more robust and more inclusive Philadelphia economy and enhance the quality of life in communities across the city. Thank you to the committee for your time and attention.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the public record, I do want residents in the city of Philadelphia who are watching at home, who are paying attention to this testimony to know that PHL Taking Care of Business is a $10 million program invested in all neighborhoods in the city of Philadelphia, where we are proposing to have 30 Philadelphians clean commercial corridors and around commercial corridors in each respective city council district. I do want to say a special thank you to eConsult for demonstrating that this program is just not worth taxpayer dollars, but it makes good economic sense. For the $10 million investment of city dollars alone, you talk about a $7 million spillover. Just for the benefit of the public that's listening, when you talk about spillover activity, what does that mean?
Sure. So when dollars are directly spent in the economy, the people that receive that spending turn around and make additional purchases. So there will be supply chain activity. The businesses that do the cleaning have, in turn, suppliers that would benefit. And then an important impact here is household spending. So the folks that are earning a salary off of this work turn around and then recirculate that money when they go to the grocery store, when they redo their homes, et cetera. So in that way, additional spending is created throughout a number of sectors of the city economy.
Finally, I want to ask you about this program that you mentioned called Clean Slate, is it?
Yes.
Now, you talked about this program having a 70%. 70%. And so when you look at a program like PHLTCB, one of the things that my colleagues, Councilman Johnson, along with Councilman Jones and all members of this body, we have been looking for tools, and I know Bilal Qayyum, we're going to hear from you for violence reduction here in the city of Philadelphia. And what would be your response to someone who is saying, we don't see how a program like this can help? The workers are only going to be working for 25 hours a week, and it's only $15 an hour. So how can you tell us that aside from the wraparound supports, GED preparation, learning to write a resume, how do you justify that these workers will not be working 40-hour work weeks?
Sure. So we really view this program as an investment in that workforce and in development of a pipeline towards permanent job opportunities. So the wraparound services that you referenced, including job training, including continuing education, and the ability for folks to develop job skills, we have seen with the Clean Slate program and other examples that when folks are exposed to those opportunities for work, it improves their ability to ultimately find permanent positions through other private sector means rather than continuing on in the program. And that actually has the ability to then open up slots for others to then join the program, fill that slot, and have the opportunity to better themselves as well. So it is really a pipeline model rather than considering that investment to be sort of the only income effect here.
So finally, and thank you for your patience, Madam Chair, just for PIDC, I thank you in your testimony for giving a historical overview about your founding and what it is that you do. And one of, for us, the most creative opportunities presented in PHLTCB is that private sector contributions are welcomed. And we hope to help and work with the private sector in attempting to generate interest from the business community to support this effort. Can you tell us about what gives PIDC the opportunity to receive private sector donations?
Sure. So PIDC actually operates a 501c3 nonprofit organization called PIDC Community Capital. And through PIDC Community Capital, we are able to access private sector funds and deploy those back out into the community through small business lending, business support services like business education workshops, or one-on-one assistance for small, diverse businesses throughout the city.
Oh, so if the private sector was feeling great about making a contribution, could they make this contribution and write it off?
Yes, it would be tax deductible through our 501c3.
Thank you for getting it on the record. Appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, we will move to panel with Beth McConnell from Philadelphia Association of CDCs, Rob Wonderling, the Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia, Donovan Sterling West, African American Chamber of Commerce, and Jeff Hornstein from the Economy League. Some of you have submitted your testimony in writing, so we will ask you to summarize. I'm going to ask the following folks to queue up. Dolores Smith Robinson from Enon CDC, Bilal Qayyum from the Father's Day Rally Committee, Crystal Brown Bradley from Gibbons Bakery and Specialty Sandwich Shop. Proceed.
Should I start? Okay. Good afternoon, Chairperson Quinones Sanchez and Vice Chair Johnson. My name is Beth McConnell. I'm the Policy Director for the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. Afternoon, other members of Council as well. We are here to testify on the four transfer ordinances that have been introduced today. I'm going to mostly focus on the PHLTCB program. These ordinances include boosts in funding for several critical equitable development programs at PACDC has long advocated for. We thank the Kenny administration and City Council for proposing to strengthen them, including the $10 million for the PHL-TCB program, which would significantly boost commercial corridor cleaning and blight removal in every council district in Philadelphia, while also providing employment opportunities. And thank you, Councilmember Parker, for championing this program. Philadelphia already has a strong commercial corridor cleaning program that can be built upon to make this program a great success. In 2018, 15 organizations collected more than 19,000 bags of trash and recycling. That's 76 bags of trash every weekday across the city. And many of these organizations also removed thousands of illegal signs, instances of graffiti, and other blighting influences on corridors. Thanks to this council and the administration, funding for that program was boosted just this past year to expand to more than 23 organizations, which was fantastic. And that's cleaning more corridors, more days and hours, and with more adequately paid staff. But even that is not enough. Litter and short dumping can pile up as soon as it's cleaned, and in a city with more than 250 commercial corridors, roughly half of which are pedestrian-oriented, we have many corridors that get no attention at all. And also at a time when small businesses face a lot of competition from big box stores and online retailers, we want to remove as many barriers as possible to help them attract customers and give these entrepreneurs a shot at success so that every pedestrian-oriented corridor in Philadelphia should be clean, should be safe, should be well-lit and attractive places to shop, dine, and access services. To that end, PACDC is also very pleased to see another $400,000 in funding in the transfer ordinance for the business security camera program, which recently ran out of funds and is not currently accepting applications. And this program provides reimbursements for small businesses that install external cameras and register them with the police department. And there's another $2.5 million in the transfer ordinance for capital improvements on our neighborhood commercial corridors, which is also desperately needed. I've submitted longer written testimony, but just in brief, we also want to acknowledge the new resources for the Housing Trust Fund in the transfer ordinance. I know some of which has been set aside to expand the Philly First Home Buying Program, which has been championed last year by the council president, council members Sanchez and Squilla and Parker, with the support of all members of City Council and the administration. It has been a resounding success since launched in June. 545 grants have been awarded for more than $4.7 million, helping moderate income homeowners achieve the dream of homeownership. Average purchase price for the homes was $160,000, which is affordable for a family earning Philadelphia's median household income. And the transfer taxes paid to the city from these new programs offset 60% of the grant funds, so that money's coming right back to us. So the program is a win-win and is really helping build household wealth in a changing city. Also want to acknowledge and support the resources for the Philadelphia Land Bank, which is critical. And we thank City Council, the Kenny administration, including the Department of Planning and Development, Division of Housing and Community Development, and the Commerce Department for working with us and the CDC community to fund and implement these successful programs, strengthening communities and creating a more equitable city. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Gwyneth Sanchez, Councilwoman Parker, members of the Committee on Appropriations. My name is Rob Wunderling, and I'm with the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia, and I'm here today to offer testimony in support of Bill 190857. Before I continue with my remarks, I'd also like to acknowledge a number of individuals that represent Chamber members that have joined us today. They're part of our City Council Connectors program that we launched on your first day of session, and many have joined us today in support of our position, in support of the transfer ordinance as identified. And as you know, our business and civic community is very much focused on inclusive neighborhood level small business growth. And in January, our Chamber of Commerce, along with other partners, launched the Neighborhood Growth Project. This project is just that. It's a long-term agenda to create free enterprise and small business opportunities in our neighborhoods. And it's being executed in partnership with a myriad of grasstops and grassroots organizations, but specifically want to recognize our partners, the African American Chamber of Commerce, who you'll hear from momentarily, the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia, the Greater Northeast Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Independent Business Alliance. Our neighborhood growth project is built around the recognition that addressing the city's deep poverty won't be accomplished through a single program or policy, but will take a coordinated, broad effort across government, business, and community leaders. It'll require improving public education, public safety, and job training. It will require laws, taxes, and regulations that are easy to understand and applied equally and consistently. Philadelphia is in the midst of a renaissance that began almost 30 years ago. Its skyline is filled with cranes and downtown buildings with new businesses, workers, and residents. The city is winning accolades for our quality of life. But at your Chamber of Commerce, we found that district by district, the analysis of key measures of strength and stability are a bit waning. In fact, I refer, as it attached to this testimony, members of this committee and others in the committee have received an analysis also conducted by eConsult that we made public a few months ago, where we've built a baseline of indices by councilmatic district, by neighborhoods, on what is required for future job growth, inclusive job growth, neighborhood by neighborhood, and council district by council district. And therefore, that's why we wholly endorse Bill 190857, and the transfer is up to $20 million into the Commerce Department's Economic Stimulus Fund, $10 million of which will go towards the Business Corridor Cleaning Program, as previously suggested, Philadelphia Taking Care of Business. We support this program as it will create nearly 300 jobs, reduce blight and litter, and help retain and attract business and residents, and decrease poverty and crime in our neighborhoods. This program fits in well with part of our policy agenda, which called for the creation of a neighborhood renaissance fund, where general operating dollars are put directly into neighborhoods to support small business enterprises, and we think this is a great first step in creating safe, clean, and welcoming commercial corridors for our city. We want to commend Councilwoman Parker's initiative. This has proven to be successful in the pilot phase in her district. We look forward to working with all of Councilwoman's colleagues here in City Council throughout as many commercial corridors possible through the district. As I conclude, I will take note in previous testimony, our colleagues at PIDC and Nevins in particular noted that there is a role for the private sector through their philanthropy for this initiative. We support that as well. In fact, in a recent survey of just 50 organizations that serve on the board of directors of your Chamber of Commerce, just in the last 2 years alone, over $95 million of charity and philanthropy have been provided to support neighborhood health, education, and public safety initiatives. Can you imagine if you had to put a premium on that philanthropy if it was delivered through the city government? So, as has always been the case with this Chamber of Commerce, we stand ready to support City Council on neighborhood growth initiatives, both in terms of policy and our philanthropy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Councilwoman and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Donovan West, and I'm the President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. An organization committed on serving businesses and communities of colors through access, advocacy, and advancement. We support Councilwoman Cheryl Parker's initiative for a number of reasons. Number one, partnership. The investment in the program demonstrates the administration's participatory partnership with minority businesses in the traditionally underserved segments throughout the city. Business owners that have grown weary from stemming the tide of blight, crime, and hopelessness will be encouraged and inspired by this bill because it provides a sorely needed structured capacity coupled with the fiscal and human capital to facilitate and monitor a cleaning agenda that will contribute significantly to the bottom line. Cleanliness. This service provides in the citywide effort to clean commercial corridors will reduce blight and litter while improving health and safety for both the business and residential communities alike. Well-meaning business owners cannot clean the whole corridor and often suffer financially as their target market will choose more attractive business corridors to shop. Additionally, due to the blight and litter issue, many potential business owners are apprehensive about developing a site within these corridors for fear of the corridor not being attractive enough to attract the desired consumers. Safety. Consumers need to feel safe when they're shopping. A clean corridor will make the environment conducive for a high volume of consumer activity. Additionally, with a 30-team member working in every district and are local by way of being in the community as well, they serve as additional eyes and ears in the community and can provide an additional way of stemming the tide of crime that currently exists. Lastly, with the living wage of $15 per hour for team members, more families will be positively impacted and less in a situation where there will be, poverty-related crimes. Employment, job creation. It reduces poverty within, this same situation, it reduces crime. With an estimated 300 jobs, local, and with living earning wages, it will function in a great first step by impacting unemployment challenges that most disenfranchised communities are facing. Additionally, the job training program will create a skilled workforce pool for many businesses in light of an industrial industry in need of expanding their business. What does that mean? It means that for many businesses that are developing the workforce, they don't have the luxury of actually developing a job-specific skilled workforce. This will provide the necessary workforce that they need so that they can actually expand in a very healthy manner. We would like to thank Councilwoman Parker for her leadership in supporting a socioeconomically healthier and cleaner city through this commercial corridors cleaning bill. On a personal note, before the chamber, I was actually COO at People for People, where we partnered with Francisville Neighborhood Development Corporation. And through the support of the Commerce Department and Wells Fargo, we were able to actually do a corridor cleaning project very similar to this with Penelope Giles and Francisville. It was very successful, and as you know, that same corridor right now is bustling with activity. So you see a lot of small businesses right now that are developing. The neighborhood also, while it's been gentrified, there's a great deal of harmony as you see the natives in that same neighborhood are participating in higher levels. It's very interactive. And so beyond the statistics that we're talking about, beyond all of the empirical data, what you'll actually see is that you can actually walk along the same corridor, this ridge corridor, and see what will happen when we actually implement this bill throughout the city. Thank you for your time, committee.
Any questions for this panel?
Just one comment, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One, I wanted to thank each of you for your testimony and send just a huge shout out to you, Beth, and the PACDCs. You guys have been pounding the pavement on this issue for a very, very long time, and I thank you. Rob Wendling, I also want to say a special thank you to you and all members of the Chamber's partnerships, particularly for your PHL neighborhood growth, and that you've ensured that the activity has made it into neighborhoods outside of Center City, because it can't be neighborhood growth without that. So we want to thank you for your efforts in that area, and to just note for the record that we're going to be heavily reliant on the private sector. It won't be a real public-private sector partnership if we don't find the way to move forward together. In addition to that, I was shocked when I read in eConsult's study, and I'm not sure about my colleagues, but the study found that corridors in neighborhoods outside of Center City account for 173,000 private sector jobs. So more than a quarter of the private sector employment in the city. And then they note that these jobs are driven by small, locally owned and diverse businesses. And this was also a kicker. More than half of the city's registered MWDBE firms are located on or adjacent to a neighborhood business corridor. When you read those data points, any specific thoughts about that and efforts to reinforce that activity?
That data is certainly consistent with our lived experience as well, and particularly in many of our corridors are thriving and bustling because of immigrant entrepreneurs that have filled vacant storefronts and opened new businesses. The more affordable rents on our corridors are opportunities for entrepreneurs that don't have access to the same kind of capital that you might need to open a downtown store. And there are also opportunities for folks that might not find traditional employment opportunities that are entrepreneurs and so just start their own business because they're finding locked out of other opportunities. And so where we can strengthen and grow and get them from being able to just basically hold on to thrive in our neighborhood commercial corridors requires an awful lot of work, requires a lot of programs, it requires a lot of partnership, but if they're not clean and they're not safe and they're not well lit, we're fighting against the wind.
I would just add briefly, we all know in a recent Center City District study, approximately 40% of our city residents take jobs in the suburbs. That's a costly endeavor, a daily endeavor, very stressful endeavor. And if we can grow free enterprise in neighborhoods over the long term and have this city government in partnership with this business community to be absolutely obsessed with that notion that every single activity, whether it's either regulatory activity or the legislative activity, is all about creating neighborhood free enterprise opportunities for residents. They'll remain working in Philadelphia, they'll thrive in Philadelphia, and we'll be able to reverse what is the decline of Philadelphia in terms of job growth as compared to our other competing cities.
Thank you.
Let me just add real quick, just really quickly.
Go ahead.
One other key component also that we're not talking about from a business perspective is, increasing retention, right? Increasing retention and reducing turnover really does impact the city also in a very detrimental way. So by way of development of these local opportunities, we're going to increase retention, reduce turnover, and then of course, make sure that we keep the dollar here in Philadelphia.
I wanted to quickly ask, because you made the point about, how we operationalize that, and we do have a commercial corridor piece. How has the administration been talking to you about the existing corridors with this money, and then how do we support some of this new initiative? And Beth, do you see a synergy around growing some of what's currently happening?
Yeah. For sure. I mean, we significantly boosted corridor cleaning contracts just this past go around with those RFPs, which was very meaningful. But still, not all corridors are being served 7 days a week. Not some corridors are this long, but we're only able to serve this much. So if we're able to, in some places where it's appropriate, based on what the local need is and what the local capacity is, we could expand potentially onto those corridors to extend those blocks, extend those hours. And then also sometimes we'll be cleaning, for example, one long corridor, but not necessarily off the intersection, kind of in the surrounding blocks, because there just aren't the resources to do it. So this program could again help build and add onto that, in addition to any corridors that are just being completely untouched at all. It is an issue, I think, that is worth spending some time thinking about, is that capacity building. And I know that's really important because we might have more capacity in some council districts than in others to be able to staff up and take this work and get it going. But that is hard work worth doing for sure. Again, where we also, to the extent that we can be thinking about this program in the larger context of all of our commercial corridor investments, where we have targeted corridor management programs, where we've been able to deploy storefront improvement programs and others, and really thinking about how we supercharge our commercial corridor programs and our investment in community economic development. This is a great step in that direction.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at as we get into next year's budget, is that, right? What is it that we give every corridor? What's the aspirational goal? What are we going to do? I think the Councilwoman's intent is to make this permanent, right? And then how do we learn from it, grow from it? What is the minimum investment that we should make in every corridor? So we actually we'll be counting on your capacity to help us build a capacity where we don't have it for those smaller groups. That's hugely important for us. And for the corridor folks who've been in this game for a while, is like, how do we really share that experience and knowledge? And how do we make sure we set up this program so it's not as bureaucratic, right? So it's as seamless and we're getting as much money on the ground is going to be hugely important.
Just quick, I forgot to acknowledge, I want to acknowledge the Commerce Department. We've been working very closely with them over the last few months to talk about that capacity building and how we can enhance the professionalization and the training and skills of our corporate management organizations. I'm really excited about some new work that we'll be doing together in the coming months on that.
Yeah, I want to welcome you to the African Chamber of Commerce and this work. We were like, when you said where you were from, we're like, okay, that's where you, we're all sitting here trying to figure out where we seen them before. So welcome to this platform and this conversation. Rob, I will be hosting a breakfast tomorrow with my community connectors or my chamber connectors, because everybody's called. I'm like, okay, we're just all going to have breakfast together.
That's awesome. We appreciate that.
But wanted to speak to specifically, because I'm going to be on a panel with Paul Levy a little bit to talk about the job growth. You know, one of the challenges, and maybe you from the chamber, from the African American Chamber, is those businesses that are one employee businesses, how do we get them to be 2 and 3? If you could say 1 or 2 things, what is it that we need to absolutely do so that as we move to next year, we really make it happen and invest in that?
Right, and appreciate the question, and you and I have had this conversation both in public forums and other meetings. And again, thanks for taking the time with our council connectors. We really appreciate it.
They're my constituents, right?
Right. So I don't think it's that difficult, and I just think it comes down to fortitude. One, as we have talked about, it's just too darn hard to open and expand a for-profit, free enterprise, or not-for-profit organization in the city of Philadelphia. Large organizations might have the resources to do so, small organizations do not. And so we should be maniacal about making it really, really easy to start and expand, particularly a small business in the city of Philadelphia. It should happen quickly with money-back guarantees in less than 2 months is the current global benchmark according to the World Bank. Second, and I know Councilman Dom is keenly interested with rising revenues. The next forecast around the completed census will probably show another uptick in our population, such that we do think the time is ripe to accelerate wage and business tax reductions for all citizens. Wage tax reduction helps the union carpenter as much as the software engineer, as much as the sole entrepreneur that's currently running a business out of their home and hopes to move it on to a commercial corridor. And of course, business taxes have been a perennial issue for many, many years. Not so much for the big, large publicly traded organizations, but for small shopkeepers, entrepreneurs, and mom and pop enterprises in our neighborhoods. And then finally, and I think Donovan really touched on it, we're at a unique moment where we have so much opportunity to hire locally, to train locally, to retain locally, regardless of one's station in life and one's zip code. We're fully committed to working on a myriad of programs, privately led, quasi-publicly led by the not-for-profit community or the government to make that so.
So from 157 steps to what are we going, Rob? Come on.
I think it could be done in 10 steps or less.
We should be at 10 steps. So
with a money-back guarantee.
You want a
if it's not
90%
delivered.
reduction in the bureaucracy. Take the challenge. Let's take the challenge. Come on.
There are plenty of large metropolitan regions around the world where that's the case today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do think that, again, part of the investment by council in these departments, thanks to the advocates and the stakeholders for the work that they do, is really how do we build in those efficiencies to make it happen. It is mind-boggling what it takes to run a business, and we do have to do more, and that's why we count on our chambers to help us do that, and we look forward to that work. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate your testimony. And then next, our final panel on this, excuse me, Councilman Dom has a question, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your testimony. I guess this came out of Rob, your testimony. You said 40% of our population commutes to a job in the suburbs every day, which I think the number is 211,000 people. So 4 to 10 people leave the city and go to a job in the suburbs. If you had your ability to change that dramatically, because we have the talent in the city, we have the talent. How could we change that so they're not commuting to the jobs and we bring those companies back into the city? You mentioned wage and business taxes, but are those the 2 key pieces?
No, as the chair indicated, and she's been very adamant in trying to make it easier to start a business, Just in terms of time, I think depending on what type of business you have and what neighborhood you live in the city of Philadelphia, it could take a year to a little over 2 years to start a business. Time is money. You're going to make a decision to move that or start that enterprise outside the city. I also think we're at an age where so much can happen in the global economy beyond our control, and so we just have to be vigilant around a public policy agenda that takes into consideration that the best thing we can do to solve poverty over the long term for people in this city is to give people an opportunity to thrive in a job that's being driven by the non-governmental sector.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you folks again for your testimony and your collaboration. This is going to be an ongoing conversation, and we look forward to it as we enter the new year. To close out this conversation, we have, Dolores Smith Robinson, Bilal Qayyum, Crystal Brown Bradley. As they come up, for the record, we have written testimony by Michael Rashid of Mecca Child Care Academy, Pearl Wang Herrera from Oxford Circle, Alex Balloon from Tacony Community Development Corporation, Eugene Desenik from Bella Vista Neighbors Association, and the African Cultural Alliance of North America, Inc. I think the councilwoman made sure that every single part of the city was represented and they have skin in the game, so we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Oh, Jeff, we forgot about you. Sorry. We want to let Jeff go first. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's always great to be here. Good afternoon, Chairperson Quinona Sanchez, members of the Committee on Appropriations. I'm Jeff Hornstein, the Executive Director of the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. We are a 110-year-old nonpartisan independent think and do tank supported by a board of nearly 60 area enterprises representing a true cross-section of our region's economy. We produce high-quality independent intelligence for the sole purpose of helping policymakers and civic leaders make data-informed decisions. The question at hand from our point of view is whether the proposed transfer of $10 million for the proposed business corridor cleaning program, PHL Taking Care of Business, PHL TCB, is a good deal for taxpayers. While there is no doubt that the program's primary objective, addressing litter and blight on the city's commercial corridors, is of great value, and I lived in Queen Village where there's a fantastic commercial corridor cleaning, PHL TCB is also being promoted as a jobs and economic development program. Thus, we must consider its economic impact and whether the benefits will be sufficient to justify the $10 million cost. I should note that as a 501c3 nonpartisan public charity, the Economy League is not taking an advocacy position on this proposal. It's our role to follow the facts where they lead. And in this case, since there are no arm-length facts or data for us to analyze yet, and since our colleagues from eConsult Solutions have been retained and done an excellent job on the economic impact projections, as an organization founded to promote shared prosperity in the city and the region, it's our role in this hearing to put a few questions on the record that may serve as guideposts to evaluate the program after it's been implemented. So according to the brochure produced, the excellent brochure produced by Councilmember Parker's office, PHL Taking Care of Business is a newly proposed citywide business corridor cleaning program in which every council district will receive 30 on-the-job trainees, each paid a living wage. The brochure also states that the funding will flow from the Commerce Department to a third-party entity, PIDC, which will issue RFPs and/or contract with CDCs and other neighborhood-based organizations, and they will hire either in-house or contract with a professional cleaning firm. As for the workers themselves, the brochure states that for the roughly 300 trainees hired, the only qualifications are that they show up to work on time and be ready to work. Trainees will each work about 25 hours a week and be paid a living wage, which is $15 an hour. Trainees will be trained as they are getting paid and will also receive additional wraparound supports. Our questions really derive from PHL's TCB's stated goals to both serve as an employment program and as a driver of small business growth. They revolve around three things: job quality, career pathways, and small business development. First, are these quality jobs? By our standards, a quality job provides a family-sustaining income. Paying adults $15 an hour for $25 a week with no benefits produces an income well below $20,000 a year, hardly enough to sustain a single person, let alone a family. By contrast, a unionized janitor working under 32BJ's citywide collective bargaining agreement, for example, earns significantly more per hour, is guaranteed more hours per week, and has benefits. It's hard to imagine that there are only 25 hours worth of work a week cleaning commercial corridors. Granted, the program calls for wraparound services and some degree of civil service preference for those in the program, but with this level of taxpayer investment, we would like to ensure that these are truly quality jobs. Second, what is the career development program? How will the trainees get beyond street cleaning jobs if that is their desire? Perhaps there is a way to make these 35 or 40-hour positions by including paid skills upgrading, a learn while you earn model. Are there commitments from employers, from the city as model employer program for one, to hire graduates from the program? The last thing we'd want to see come out of this program are jobs that perpetuate the cycle of poverty. Third, the program also purports to support small businesses and entrepreneurs, presumably because local and hopefully diverse firms will be given preference for the contracts awarded by the district-level organizations through which the funds will flow. Because of the Economy League's work with Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity, or PAGE initiative, we know that the path to business growth for small firms, particularly diverse firms, requires more than just access to contracts. It requires access to capital as well as access to capacity building programs. What is the plan to ensure that PHL-TCB is helping grow small business capacity? Are there relationships built with credible capacity building programs to ensure that our small businesses grow as a result of this $10 million taxpayer investment? These questions are asked in the spirit of wanting to make sure this program, and I will say personally that I think this is an excellent program, meets its objectives, but also out of a desire for accountability for taxpayer investment. For one, we'd like to see a proposed budget for this program. The direct annual labor cost for 300 trainees before payroll taxes and any markup to contractors is roughly $5.6 million. How will the remaining $4.4 million be spent? What is the proposed margin for for-profit contractors? Are there funds earmarked for small business development? Again, these are questions that we want to put on the record so that when we look back on this hopefully very successful program, we can have some metrics to measure them by. We look forward to your responses and to analyzing the program's results in the future, and thank you for inviting the Autonomy League to testify.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Councilman Doms, Councilman Johnson, and my councilperson, Parker. I'm Bilal Khayyam, President of the Father's Day Rally Committee. Father's Day Rally Committee is this year we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. It's an organization started out of the need to promote positive images of fathers, and particularly African American and Latino males in the city of Philadelphia. My testimony today is going to be is personal. In 2006, when I was 60 years old, I took a walk to Harrisburg. It took me 6 days walking, and I walked under the banner, "Jobs, not guns." And along with me, it was two other men to walk with me, but we also had a big SUV that followed us, and on the side of the SUV was a big banner saying, "Jobs, not guns." An interesting thing was we were going from city to city to city, and the more we left Philadelphia, the more rural it came. And along the highway, it was very interesting. These bubble trucks would be passing us with gun racks on these trucks, and they would beep and give me a thumb sign. So it was like, wow, what is this about with these bubble trucks and these gun racks? So every time we stopped along the route to getting something to eat, had opportunity to talk to a lot of these gentlemen. Most of them were gentlemen. And what they shared with me was they disagreed with my discussion I had with them about gun legislation, but they all agreed with me for the needs of jobs. And I also found out in that walk, going to these rural areas, there was a high number of suicide among young white males that we don't hear about in the city of Philadelphia. And the suicide was based on they didn't see the opportunities for them to get employment because the economy has changed. So it gave me a new look, a new thought pattern about how important a job is. So this bill, I am totally behind supporting it because I understand how important a job is. I'm lucky. I've worked all my life. I had a job all my life. I worked in government, as a lot of you know. But I had a lot of friends who don't work. And I talked to them, and the psychological problems that they're going through. One friend in particular called me up one night, and he was talking about his wife that lost her job, and when he came home from work, she was in a closet in a house crying because she'd been working all of her life, and she lost her job. Luckily, the support system he had with her was able to get her beyond that point because she felt worthless. She felt like she had no pride in herself because she wasn't working. When she started working again, she turned back to the way she was before, a joyful and lovely person. So I'm saying that to say this. It's very interesting, and I got to pat my colleague next to me. People are not working. I always question about job programs of people who are not working. We need to get people to work. When I stop at Broad Island and I see those black men working, cleaning up, and I stop and talk to them, they are proud men. They are glad they're working. Yes, should they be making more money? Yes. Should they have benefits? Yes. But in America, the latest statistics, when you hear our crazy president, and I was getting ready to say something else, talking about the high number of black folks working higher than before. What he doesn't tell you is that all the national statistics and the latest employment statistics coming out of Washington shows that the growth in the black community among jobs is among black women, but they're being paid less. Guess what? The one party population in America now whose jobs number has not decreased but has increased are black males. So a program like this can help address this. We should be sitting here talking about not about $10 million, why can't we do $20 or $30 million?
Amen.
Instead of 300 jobs, we need to talk about 1,200 jobs, 1,500 jobs. We have to talk about jobs. Tying it into the violence, everybody knows for over 40 years I've been involved trying to reduce violence in this city. People don't realize when we had gang deaths of 90 gang deaths per year in the city of Philadelphia, when I worked at the House of Emotion, when we brought gang deaths from 90 to 100 a year to 0 in 1979, a lot of folks don't know that we were able to negotiate with the gang members, particularly the leadership, to stop the gang war in the city of Philadelphia, because one of the tools we had was we were able to work with agencies in the private sectors to get them jobs. So if we get folks jobs, it's not going to solve all the violence problem in the city of Philadelphia. It's not going to solve all the shootings in the city of Philadelphia. But I believe totally over the years and looking at what's going on in Philadelphia, what we did in this city across the country, we can reduce violence in the city of Philadelphia. So I know that my councilwoman Parker did not intend to create this bill to be a job bill that would reduce violence, but thank God she's introducing this bill. And I'm saying that getting these young men to work and getting young women to work that don't have those opportunities can be a violence reduction program. I will end by saying that a good friend of mine who's an economist told me a couple weeks ago, Blau, when private sector, and I hope the private sector folks, the chamber folks are here, still here listening to me, when they don't step up and provide employment, then government has to step up and provide employment. And this bill is a step forward to me providing that effort. We have too many young folks in the city of Philadelphia who don't have hope, don't have belief that this system is going to work for them because they don't see opportunities. And we have to break that cycle. This is one bill I believe can help be the first step. Yes, it's not perfect. As all bills, you always got to work out the cranks, but I'm here supporting, totally my support for Bill 190650.
Good afternoon. These are my written testimony. My name is Dolores Smith Robinson, and I am the program coordinator of the Enon Coulter Community Development Corporation. Before I begin my testimony, I'd like to thank Chairwoman Sanchez and Councilwoman Sherelle Parker for inviting the CDC to the Appropriation Committee hearing to explain the success and benefits of the trilateral partnership for the 9th District community. This pilot project is a partnership between the Enon Coulter Community Development Corporation, the Office of 9th District Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, and the City of Philadelphia Commerce Department to maintain clean and safe corridors in the 9th District neighborhoods in order to enhance the quality of life, providing employment and entrepreneurial opportunities for local residents. Our cleaners are providing daily trash removal, removing vegetation and overgrowth, reporting incidents of short dumping for immediate removal, and finally maintaining overall cleanliness on neighborhood commercial corridors throughout the 9th District community. The project also includes a commercial corridor branding initiative, which will involve the installation of banners along light posts and wrapping big belly trash cans with the same design. Tentatively scheduled to begin December of 2019, the branding initiative will support the overall economic development goals for the 9th District corridors, including increasing pedestrian traffic and greater economic activity for local businesses. In the near future, the CDC will schedule community engagement meetings to discuss ideas for the banner designs. Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church mission is to offer families a Christ-centered, biblically based ministry that is educational, evangelical, inspirational, and combative of negative forces in our community. This project advances our 2019 theme of valuable life in the scripture Romans 12:2, which means to be on one accord and establish cooperative relationships throughout the community. We are always seeking ways to extend our missions ministry to help our city and local communities. We believe in active community service, and this is an opportunity to support surrounding communities, local small businesses, and entrepreneurship, and reentry services such as our Uplift program where we have partnered with ShopRite, and the local workforce development. 10% of Enon's tithes go to community organizations. This cleaning project is an extension of Enon's commitment to supporting the community. Enon East is located at 2800 Cheltenham Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the 9th District, and we have several members who live, work, own businesses, or attend school in the council district. As part of our outreach, we believe our projects must be community-based and that neighbors should be able to see what the church is doing and feel the impact. We want to be good partners in the city's effort to support our local economy and elevate the quality of life for community residents. In order to realize her vision of strengthening the commercial corridors in the district, Councilwoman Parker wanted to partner with the community CDC to maintain clean and safe corridors. Aware of Enon's commitment to missions work, including the work of the CDC, she approached us to seek our assistance in overseeing this important effort. The Commerce Department requires that this work be led by a viable community organization, and there are few providing this service in the northwest section of the city. The success of this pilot is important to the CDC and Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, and we understand the initiative may lead to additional funding to support future commercial corridor projects. We've seen the benefits of the success public-private partnerships with the recent Vernon Road Corridor Revitalization Project. Through this initiative, we will help maintain the improvements along Vernon Road and other corridors in the 9th District. We know that projects are successful when cities partner with community development groups to enhance existing municipal services, and to provide additional services that address needs identified by the community. The Enon Coulter CDC has contracted with TWB Cleaning Contractors, a Black-owned and woman-owned local business, to provide the corridor maintenance and public space cleaning services. Enon Coulter CDC is a separate and distinct entity from the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church and is led by a separate board and directors. The corridors currently being serviced by TWB Enterprises include the Broad and Olney Business Corridor, which starts at Tabor Road and goes to Champlos Avenue. It also includes Spencer Street to Godfrey Avenue. Broad Street starts at Wyoming Avenue to Wagner Avenue, Old York Road, Upper and Lower, Ogons Avenue, Stinton Avenue, Vernon Road, Wadsworth Avenue, Washington Lane, and Cheltenham Avenue. The banner initiative will be, the banners will be posted on Wadsworth Avenue, Ogons Avenue, Stinton Avenue, and Washington Lane. Funding for this project has been provided by the 9th District Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, the City of Philadelphia Commerce Department, and the Einstein Healthcare Network. Additional partners included State Senator Art Hayward. The impact of this initiative is as follows. It's building and supporting local workforce, creating employment opportunities for local residents, recruitment and hiring of reentry citizens, contributing to local economic development efforts and economic stability by maintaining clean, safe, and vibrant commercial corridors, which enhances neighborhoods, attracts businesses, eliminates blight, ensures safe passage by pedestrians, and enhances public service, especially in low and moderate income communities. Supporting neighborhood-based small businesses. It also supports a black and woman-owned local business. Trina W. Benjamin is the president of the TWB Cleaning Enterprise LLC, and she's been hired to provide cleaning services. Trina is committed to building a skilled workforce and emphasizes leadership development and customer service when training her employees. Ms. Benjamin prioritizes the hiring of reentry citizens and residents of the 9th District. Finally, increasing Enon's visibility throughout the community and promoting our commitment to supporting local neighborhoods and small businesses through our missions work. Enon is listed as a sponsor on the cleaning uniforms and press materials. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you for your time, attention, and interest in the 9th District Commercial Corridor Cleaning and Greening Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your patience. I want to thank all of the departments. I don't know if Councilwoman Parker wanted to add anything as we close out this. Oh, we have one more? Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Is that Crystal Brown? Yes, Bakery. There you go.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Crystal Brown, and I have a family-owned business called Gilbin's Bakery, which is located along Stinton Avenue Commercial Corridor. My family opened the business in the summer of 2017. And immediately we noticed the amount of trash that always accumulated in front of the bakery. When it was windy, trash and debris would be dispensed throughout the entire block, which kept the area very unsightly and untidy. We found ourselves, along with many other business owners, sweeping in the morning as well as the afternoon. This was discouraging as well as disheartening. We were so pleased when Councilwoman Sherelle Parker implemented the Business Corridor Cleaning Program this summer. We immediately noticed a huge difference in the corridor. There was no more trash in the streets or sidewalks. In fact, I noticed people are becoming more conscious of how they dispose of their trash and keep the area clean by not littering. The program is restoring pride and dignity to our businesses as well as the neighborhood. By having regular scheduled cleaning on our business corridor, it helps me as a small business owner feel supported by the City of Philadelphia. And last but not least, I hold in my hand many testimonies of business owners along Stitton Avenue, expressing their support and their whole heart gratitude to Councilwoman Sherelle Parker for implementing this cleaning program. And so I would like to enter them in for testimony.
Yes. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank you and all members of the committee for your patience. I just want to state for the record that Crystal is here, and you just heard from her from Gilpin's Bakery. But she did not just come with her testimony alone. She has handwritten letters, Councilwoman. So let's just talk about Councilman Johnson when a small business owner does some work, of all of the business owners that are on her commercial quarter. If you ever try to leave the 9th Councilmatic District, I will stalk you, Crystal. Thank you
But
so
you can
much.
expand.
She can do that. She can do that. To E9, look, thank you all so very much for your help. Please regards to Pastor Waller and all members of the E9 CDC team. Without your partnership, we don't make this possible. Bilal Qayyum, I'm glad you took that 6-day walk and that you had that experience. And I thank you for the work that you do on the ground, helping our young people, and actually was one of the very first people, the second person outside of my staff who I had spoken to when we were working on getting the pilot started. And I want to thank you for your confidence, and thank you for being here to testify. To my good friend, Jeff, we wanted you here because of your perspective. I appreciate your noting on the record that we do need to create quote-unquote good jobs. And as a passionate advocate for retirement security, something that I've been an advocate for since my tenure in the PA General Assembly, there is nothing more important to me than moving a person towards self-sufficiency than a living wage, access to health care, and retirement security. However, as Councilwoman Sanchez, Councilmember Johnson, and I were just sharing up here, especially when you heard in E9's testimony that the owner of the small business specifically focuses on those who are coming back to neighborhoods. So the constituency that we're talking about, the barriers to access and the barriers to entry for them have at times seemed so insurmountable to pass. And when they're trying to build a resume so that one day, or go back and get a GED or get some training skills so that they can pass that civil service test, or so that they can become members of SCIU 32BJ or the Laborers District Council or District Council 33. I mean, ultimately, that's where we would like all of our people to be. But if this is going to give them immediate access, with the only barrier being your willingness to get up and go to work, with all that our city is facing, it's definitely worth the try. In addition to that, I was really encouraged, Crystal, by the letters with all of the business owners noting that the people cleaning have been on time. Yes. Every day. We think that those soft skills of getting up every morning and reporting to a place are skills that everyone has, as if it's standard operating procedure. And I would argue that everyone doesn't have access to those skills. And so now they're cleaning in front of a business who said, listen, you've come on time. I appreciate you. You've given me some dignity. You've encouraged me to believe that I could make a difference. We have to work through that. I want to appreciate on the record E-Consult's testimony, and I said to Councilman Bobby Heenan that although he is not here today, he did submit in writing. Alex Balloon from the Tacony CDC, and Councilwoman Sanchez, you were absolutely right. We were very intentional about ensuring that there were comments on the record from every section of the city of Philadelphia to ensure that this was not something that was just being driven by one region, but commercial quarters that don't have a bid, a NID, or a TRID, who don't have access to the administrative capacity to complete applications for grants. They are the ones who have not gotten access to this support. So to the Economy League. Jeff, you know you're a very good friend of mine. I think you have one of the best minds in the world, and we are going to look to you to continue giving us guidance, particularly after our first year, where we begin to track and literally measure that retention rate that the African American Chamber of Commerce talked about during their testimony, to see how much support we've been able to drum up from the private sector. And we did not mention it on the record. We also have talked to members of the Philadelphia delegation in Harrisburg in both the House and the Senate, and all of them appear to be interested in wanting to see how we can all add value to this process. So I just wanted to say thank you to for your testimony. It was important to get it on the record. Madam Chair, we've got 100,000 other meetings that are happening, but I appreciate your patience in just allowing us to get through this. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank all of the administration and all of the department heads. We're going to try to get to some of this real smoothly, but Councilman Kenyatta Johnson?
Just had a compliment, commending Councilwoman Sherelle Parker for this legislation, for this initiative, but most importantly, wanted to highlight Mr. Bilal Qayyum's comments, how this particular initiative addressed the issue of youth gun violence, addressed the issue of rising people out of poverty, and we want to talk about statistics to back up the factual data regarding how in areas of high crime and violence are predominantly areas of poverty. And so I thank Councilwoman Sherelle Parker for this initiative, and most importantly, including the whole council body to have the opportunity to participate. Because at the end of the day, whether it's $15 an hour or a union job, I meet individuals on a day-to-day basis that just want to get off the streets, but don't have an alternative. And so this is definitely going in the right direction. So I just want to highlight that part of the testimony. And thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. I also want to thank everyone for their patience, leadership in this, and I really do look forward to figuring out all the different ways we can leverage this new investment. So thank you all. So we're going to quickly, I'm going to try to move through some of the administrative questions for the departments before we get to the amendments, and in particular, the animal control amendment for the record with Councilman Dom. I wanted to get the independent elected officials on, if they can come forward, somebody from the Register of Wills, Sheriff, the city commissioners, and the courts. I have some council colleagues who are not here, and I got to put some stuff on the record real quickly. Got to do everybody's business. I could release the people from the district attorney's office. They got their budget allocation, so I think they're happy and they can go. Sorry, Arun. I just thought about, I didn't want to, you guys are good. I'll start with you, Nick, real quick. Congratulations on the new machine situation. Real quickly for the record, I know that as we rolled that out, there were questions from Councilman O around language and education. So I wanted to know if some of the transfer money, I know you have some additional salary stuff, what, if anything, additional you need for the education campaign as we move forward into the next election cycle?
That's something we can get back to you on as we evaluate what we did in this election year. But obviously, we're going to need some funds in order to really get the word out to the voters of Philadelphia before the April primary. We had about 300,000 people cast a ballot in November, and we're going to have a lot more voting in April.
There was a last-minute legislation up at the state around mail-in voting and other things. Have you guys begun to look at that and what the impact is going to be?
Oh, yeah. Not just the mail-in voting part, but the part that makes...
15-day registration.
Yeah, the 15-day, we're going to be actually looking to probably set up meetings with you guys in the administration to talk about what kind of impact that's going to have on our budget. We are definitely going to need to drastically increase our staff in order to make those new deadlines.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure we put that on the record. I know that was kind of last minute things leading up to this. Was there anything else related? I know you guys didn't do the poll book situation. Is there any updates for us on that we should be aware of at this point, or?
No, the law department is handling that right now, so.
So let me strongly encourage you to work on an aggressive plan and plan for what you need, not what they've given you, because this is hugely important and next year is hugely important for us. So okay, so thank you, Nick, and again, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Let's the courts. Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown is not here, but one of the last initiatives she worked on was the daycare situation in the courts, and for some reason that has not happened. Is there anything you want to put on the record as an update as it relates to that?
We met with her and we talked about it and the expense involved in it. We've been looking into it because part of it is where we would put it, how it would be funded. One of the things that we discussed that might be a more practical approach to jurors that are coming in is the possibility of giving them vouchers for daycare at their existing daycare rather than relocating a child to a different location and then being concerned. One of the problems is in family court building where there is in fact a court nursery, that the court nursery not only deals with the children who are involved in very difficult custody cases, but also children who are involved in a dependency case and are neglected and abused. So the problem is where we would set something like that up and how we would fund it.
I want the courts to know that even though she will not be here, this issue will not die.
We don't have our goal, in principle, we do not disagree, which is to get as many people involved in jury duty as we can in the city of Philadelphia and to work towards that goal and the best way to do it. So how we do that, we may disagree, but the truth of the matter is we have the same goal. And that to the court is extremely important.
Okay. I just want to make sure for the record, she's not here today, but these are issues that have been extremely important to her, and whether it's our new Councilwoman-elect, Catherine Gilmore Richardson, or the Women of Council, we're going to continue to pursue and make sure that in the next year's budget, we see a plan reflected of that.
Councilwoman, your and City Council's encouragement to assist the courts in getting more citizens in the city involved in jury duty, we are open to and encourage. Okay. So thank you.
I have one financial question, and it may be because they're in separate fiscal years. In your zero growth agreement, you have an excess of $2 million, but then in our transfer ordinance, there's an additional $487,000 being given to the courts. Can you reconcile that for me?
I'll be glad to, Councilwoman. Our actual ending balance was about $2.6 million. What we've done is taken the $485,000 from our FY19 budget and moved it into our FY20 budget. So the mid-year ordinance is actually cost neutral to the city because we're funding this part of our this increase with our own funds.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anybody here from the Register of Wills or the Sheriff's Office?
Thank you.
Thank you. No? Okay. Marissa, just for the record, I think it's hugely important. I don't know what the transition plans are for that, those offices, but I want to make sure that we put that on the record, that as these offices transition, their financial plans are hugely important to us, so we...
And that there's support.
Councilwoman Parker agrees with me over here, so we'd
Yes.
like to see some sort of financial transition plan for the new folks coming in.
We agree, thank you.
We'll put that on the record. Thank you very much. Health Department, I have another question for someone, council colleague who's not here. Anybody here from the Health Department? You want to respond to it?
Yeah, and if we...
Okay.
And the commissioner is here as well.
As Dr. Farley comes up to the table, Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown, again, in her work and in her legacy around lead, There was, in fiscal year 20, a $200,000 allocation for a pilot program for landlords. Her understanding is the money is there, it's being used for some other things. We want to make sure that on the record, what is the plan for this pilot program, and will something be launched this year?
Are you talking about the current fiscal year or the fiscal year 20?
Her understanding that it was in fiscal year 20, and so there was a decision internally made, and I'm summarizing that money has been used for something else, but we want to make sure that there is a commitment to a $200,000 pilot as part of our legislation to assist landlords in the remediation of lead.
Right. There is, my understanding, $200,000 in the current year's budget to be used for assisting landlords with remediation. And then there's a request for $200,000 in the next fiscal year's budget to build a database to implement the law that Councilmember Reynolds Brown championed. So
is the pilot off for landlords? Is that for this year?
The database doesn't work. Again.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
I'm sorry. So I think our understanding is the flip. We needed the database first and then the pilot. So the database is in the process of being built, should be done early FY21, and that's where the first 200,000 is. And then the expected 200,000 for FY21 would be to then, once there's the database, which is the prerequisite to be able to administer the program, do that pilot.
Okay, so if we can get that update and put it on the record for her. Thank you, thank you. That's for the health department. Okay, let me go through this list. Housing. I know Ann's been waiting so patiently over there for me to ask questions. So let me start off, and I know for Councilwoman Parker this was important as it is for all of us, the first time buyer program and its success. Councilwoman Parker and I are anxiously waiting on the list, because sometimes I'm ahead and then sometimes she's ahead, and you are not catching up. But in addition so I know the administration is putting, as part of this transform ordinance, additional money. Is that because there is a waiting list? We know we're going to be able to move this money out quickly?
So it's my understanding that there was an agreement for the fiscal year 20 budget to put $20 million into the Housing Trust Fund. I think initially we got 13 million, some that came over. And so part of this is the 7 million to get up to 20. And then the other 3 million is our understanding. It's $1 million more coming in for our programs. And then 2 million would be used in some way to support homeless housing. So of all the money other than the 2 million to support homeless housing, because we haven't had a conversation with the Office of Supportive Housing yet about how they would like to use that money, the rest of it is all committed.
Okay, awesome.
And if I could just clarify, that's in the FY19 year-end transfer ordinance. There's an additional 5 million for the Housing Trust Fund in the FY20.
Okay, so we can keep spending, right?
Yeah, we're going to keep spending. We keep putting it out. So just as an example, we put out letters, I think it could have been Thursday, could have been Friday of last week, of about $28.5 million to support 9% tax credit deals. We hope that we will be as successful as we were this past round. We got about half the tax credits available in the state, which is pretty good for Philadelphia. So hopefully we'll get another 7-8 projects next year.
Okay, good. So want to talk a little bit about the land bank. There's a significant increase in here. So I want to know, how many dispositions have we done this year? And how many will we be able to do with this additional resources?
Sure. I'm gonna have,
oh, excuse me.
Yep.
Is it related to the?
To the Housing Trust real quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't want to interrupt, just having one quick question, just to ask while you were going, well, you were explaining some of the programs and the resources that are available for affordable housing. Last year, FY19, there was 2 years prior holdover of $4 million and $4 million for a total of $8 million for affordable housing that was to be determined for programming. Has that been earmarked, and have they been are they going towards some of the either programming with affordable housing?
Right, so I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure what the 4 million and the 4 million is that you're referring to.
That's $8
We
million.
believe that
It's $8 million.
It's the 4 million and the 4 million, right? So the 8
That we
million?
discussed in length.
Yeah, so I would say
last
that,
year.
based on our understanding of the dollars that we have available, it's all committed other than the 2 million for the Office of Supportive Housing.
Okay, so if I go back and take a look at notes of testimony and hearing.
Yeah, if you can provide me the exact reference or more specifics, I can.
Right, only because you just went through real quick, which is great.
Sure.
You know, just a litany of allocations and programs briefly as we're leading up to the land bank. You know, my concern is sometimes we have a lot of carryover and for certain programmings, and it hasn't been actually, like programs aren't in place yet. So maybe offline, you know,
Sure.
I can provide you
happy to provide
some of the information that I'm
as much
talking about.
detailed information as we can about any of the things you have questions about.
So that we get all too quick to, you know, we get out of line sometimes from our big comprehensive plan.
Sure.
And I would just want to make sure that what we're doing as we anticipate the next couple of years, you know, that we're doing it responsibly and making sure that the programs that we did commit it or programs that are not in place actually come to fruition, and that we're leveraging, you know, the same dollars instead of,
Yes.
you know, reallocating.
Yes.
Yeah, I think some of that is, there was 2 million for counseling and some of the support administrative services. Your accelerator program, was that like 2 million? And then I think some of the right to counsel money. So some of it has been, I think that's what he.
Yeah, so I can give you an update.
I think he needs that updated stuff. I think there was some right to counsel, accelerator fund, and the housing counseling programs.
So right to counsel, I think, is again being, we're a pass-through for that. That will go into the Eva Gladstein's budget, essentially. So that will go there. And the accelerator fund, we actually have it established as far as an entity, but now we got to.
What was the allocation for that?
So that was 2 million.
I think that's what,
Yeah.
I think everybody should get an update.
Yeah, and I mean,
around
the other programs that we talked about getting up is Philly First Home, which is just like wildfire. And the other one that we're working on is Shallow Rent, that'll get established for existing subsidized housing. I think there's probably the RFP, the first RFP will go out in January. And then for potentially a similar program for naturally occurring, probably happen towards the end of first quarter, calendar year 2020.
Okay, thank you. So we've made that request officially. That update of that spread to all members of council will be greatly appreciated.
Yep.
So back to my land bank. How many dispositions have we done? How many are we going to do by December 31st?
So, hi, Angel Rodriguez, Executive Director of the Land Bank, Senior Vice President for PHDC for Land Management. I'll leave it at that. Fiscal year 19, we closed out the year having done 143 units of housing, and that's a mix of market rate and then affordable housing ranging from 30% of AMI up to 120% of AMI. Do you want me to go through the past 3 fiscal years?
No. I want to know, what are we going to get done for the additional investment we're doing?
For fiscal year 20, what we have queued up is 164 units so far for affordable housing predominantly. And then we have 21 side yard dispositions that are queued up. And then gardens and open space and business expansions, we have 6 other units, 6 lots. So that we have queued up so far. And we are consistently putting up requests for proposals for larger swaths of land, about 20 units at a time, or 20 parcels at a time, specifically asking for mixed income, predominantly the vast majority asking for affordable housing, either 120% of AMI, but we're leaning more towards 80% of AMI, and then a small percentage that would be market rate, which would allow developers to earn some money because we're offering the land without subsidy.
Okay. Thank you. One last thing, U.S. bank liens. Part of the discussion has been, as we've added money to the Housing Trust Fund, as to what we do with this portfolio. Any updates on that?
Currently, I don't have a direct, I'm not involved in the negotiations with U.S. bank liens. I can only speak to the fact that we do have a certain number of properties on hold, but we, by the current acquisition policy, we don't have any authority to satisfy those liens.
Right. I believe the city treasurer's office is negotiating with the entity that holds those liens right now.
Yeah, as you know, I have 1,300 of these in my district, a large concentration below Lehigh, and they're going up for sale. And so it is hugely important that as we do all this great work around the subsidy, that we consider how that is going to impact the gentrification in South.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have, those properties are all throughout the city and oftentimes have an impact, particularly when we're trying to do land assemblage.
Okay, so I look forward to that conversation. Councilman Kenyatta Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony, Ann and Angel. I just had a question. Is there a targeted number of affordable housing units that we are targeting in terms of the administration? Or is there an overall affordable housing plan? Like, for instance, we have a plan for Vision Zero. We know we want so many miles of bike lanes. I'm here in the city of Philadelphia, so many miles of protected bike lanes. There's an actual targeted number. Similarly, the administration has a plan that deals with climate control, and so by the year 2024, we have specific targeted goals as relates to climate change that we're approaching as a city. Do we have the same thing when it comes to the issue of affordable and workforce housing units, strategically looking at the city as a whole?
So we do have those goals in our housing action plan that are 10-year goals. The strategic plan for the land bank has specific goals around acquisition, disposition, and then broken down by units. I think one of the things that will be useful in the legislation that was recently passed around land disposition is having that be a 3-year plan so it can be more strategic with an annual report. And we are sitting down talking about different ways to strategize about land disposition and how we could do that, in the way so that we're putting more property out at one time or putting it out under different kinds of mechanisms in order to really ramp up and be able to get the properties back out on the street and onto useful life.
Do we know what this number is? 1,000 units, 15?
For housing?
1,000, yeah.
So overall, 10 years, it's 100,000 units that they're broken down over different, whether they're new production or preservation. So it's detailed in the Housing Action Plan. I'm happy to come over and sit down and talk you through that. And then there's also goals in the strategic plan that are mostly tied to funding.
So 100,000 affordable and workforce units, some being preserved,
So
some new.
overall, it's 100,000 units over 10 years that is homeless all the way through market rate, and then it's broken down by income and rental versus home ownership. So there's a clear chart in the plan. I'm happy to send that to you.
And can we exclude market rate as a part of that conversation and just strictly look at affordable and workforce units?
So there's a chart in the plan that shows every type of unit, whether the rental, home ownership, and then also by income. I encourage you to look at that, and then if you have questions, happy to come meet with you and talk to you about it.
Okay, just want to add that for the record. Thank you. Angel?
So as Ann mentioned, the strategic plan for the land bank does have specific goals by income bracket and also by end use, which includes side yards, gardens, business expansion, market rate, and runs down the list in terms of affordable housing. The 2019 strategic plan, the first draft is published. We will be coming to council for final approval. Those numbers are being updated, as well as based on market research that's been done with the new MVA. So that will be presented to council for review prior to adoption and resolution from the council. The numbers, we typically have about anywhere in excess of 200 units that should be produced in any fiscal year for affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Angel.
Thank you. So we have good news. We got a lot of money. Now let's go out and invest it. Thank you. Any other questions?
That's the plan.
You know, I'll spend it. You don't spend it, I'll spend it. So next, we have some questions for the Managing Director's Office around the crime prevention transfer. And I know we had a press conference, I guess it was last Wednesday? The day after election, Councilman Johnson and Council President Clark and Councilman Jones. So in addition to some of the work that's being done, okay, good. So in addition to some of the work, and I mentioned this to Vanessa earlier, and I want to put this story on the record because I think it's hugely important. As many of you know, the last 3 shootings of the children have been in my district. And I got a pretty irate email from a constituent who was attacked at McPherson after she tried to intervene with young kids who were beating up someone who was homeless. And I listened to the story intently, and then as she finished, said to her, these young people are lashing out. They're lashing out because we have homeless folks who have taken over their green space, what was their safe space, and they're lashing out. Adults are lashing out in Pleasanton and some of the things, and I really do appreciate the administration taking this seriously, the rapid response teams after the shooting. But my question is, what are we doing before the shooting? And what is it that we could be doing, or is the administration thinking about investing in those communities where the trauma, these young people were responding to what they believe is a hostile situation towards them and responding to some of the work there?
So good afternoon. It's Vanessa Garrett Harley, Deputy Managing Director for Criminal Justice and Public Safety for the city. The city's plan with regards to violence prevention is entitled the Philadelphia Roadmap to Safer Communities, and that is where we work very closely with police. Center point is Operation Pinpoint, which is the policing strategy, but it really is coming at approaching the violence and violence prevention from a public health aspect, which is pretty much what you just described, which is trying to get at the root causes of what is causing some of the violent behavior and activities, and sort of attacking it from all sides in order to figure out the best way to uplift some of these individuals, particularly young people, as well as the communities. What is being done is the city is working together, all of the various city agencies, to think about how we wrap around services around an individual, because no one set of services for many of these young people that you've described may be the correct answer. So it's how we wrap those services together to try and prevent the behavior that you saw, and or try to prevent that behavior from escalating into the wrong trajectory in terms of a criminal record or past. Those folks that are at the table from the city include the Department of Behavioral Health, which we coordinate our sort of crisis response, but not only crisis response, they have a myriad of prevention programs that work in the various communities and with certain providers to try and address the trauma that many of these kids feel, and you aptly described as why they may be acting out. The Department of Human Services are also at the table. Some of these young people may be acting out because of, we don't know the situations in their home, and they may be lashing out on the basis of, based on some things they've seen or experienced that would be, unsightly for us to even think about, but they're trying to maneuver through that. We also have at the table the Office of Workforce Development, who are helping us to develop those kind of career-ready programs that we just described. Many of your Councilwoman Parker's plan and others have described, and we understand the importance of not only career readiness, but creating additional job opportunities so that there are alternatives for some folks who get involved in the violence as an offshoot of just trying to survive, basically, or have enough funding or money for themselves or their families. Also at that table is the School District of Philadelphia. Some of the issues you described around those young people may in fact involve some issues that can be addressed or can be curbed in that educational arena.
We certainly also have the licensing and inspection, as well as CLIP, as well as the streets department, as we try to address that blight remediation that you've also heard several folks testify here today, and we agree with wholeheartedly that the community and where some folks live and the environment that they're in plays a part in the activities that they are involved in. So there are a number of programs that are going on beforehand that we're trying to do. With specifics to Office of Violence Prevention work is the, we call it CCIP, but there's the Community Crisis Intervention Program. Not only are they on the streets and responding after an event occurs, and I'm sure you probably did see them out there after some of these tragedies that we recently had, they're also out there addressing the community, acting sort of as a conduit between them and city social services and other places where to go for help, and also sometimes as a liaison between them and the police department. They're out there trying to de-escalate tension so that they don't rise to the level of violence, and they also, even after, unfortunately, a shooting or a homicide has occurred, are out there trying to prevent retaliatory type continued shootings so that that won't help. They do some hospital-based intervention. So they also go to the hospitals, because often when you get two families together or emotions are running high, other things erupt. The YVRP is our Youth Violence Reduction Partnership, and that is addressing young people ages 14 to 25. Now, unfortunately, these are young people who are already have committed a criminal act and are on probation or parole or under court supervision, and have been deemed to be at the highest risk of either killing or being killed. And that's a very intensified supervision program that is done in conjunction with all the criminal justice partners, District Attorney's Office, police, probation and parole, juvenile probation and parole. The PAN is the provider who administers both CCIP as well as YVRP, and is closely at the table as we try to figure out all of these various strategies. We also work with the Parks and Recreation Department to think about what kind of positive activities can we have for these young people. In the summertime, we increased the hours so that the rec centers were open later. Many of the city agencies got together and did the movie nights, so that there would be some positive places that people could take their young people. Certainly, we're always trying to brainstorm and are thinking about other ways and ideas that we can introduce some different things into the community. We also had the targeted community investment grants, which we provided grants to community-based organizations who have often, many of them are doing this work on the ground, but have not been able to get city support or any support, and those agencies, many of them had programs that worked very well in terms of trying to address some of the behaviors that you described.
Yeah, it'd be important, particularly, I know that was your first round of grants, and, you know, as people applied, if you could provide to the chair so we can provide kind of a district by district, who applied, who fell through because of whatever reason, and those kinds of investments, so when you launch your spring one, those of us who are aware of people who may have applied and for whatever reason didn't get in the mix, that we could help and support. Councilman Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Vanessa, first and foremost, for your hard work and your dedication on this topic, and most importantly, since you have taken the helm of this position, and most importantly, fixing the system and making sure we're on the ground and addressing this issue. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Shondell Ravel, who's running the Office of Violence Prevention, as well as Theron Pride for his work as well, because we know this isn't an easy issue. I'm always one to say this takes everyone on a roll up their sleeve to get involved to address this issue that we're seeing consistently on a day-to-day basis plaguing our city. Just a couple things I just wanted to go through. Obviously, the administration is moving forward. I think we're roughly close to $5 million transfer ordinance, which I support. You know, it's not a secret, I think, that we should do more, but this is on the beginning of that process. And, you know, as we move into the new year, you know, I'll be consistently seeking additional funding, but, you know, having conversations with different individuals in my community, funding without a strategic overall plan is just funding, right?
Exactly.
And so we want to be supportive from that aspect to really make sure that the funding is going to the actual resources. I mean, the funding is going to the individuals that need it, but most importantly to effective strategies that goes toward reducing gun violence, as opposed to we just got funding and hey, the issue is still the same. And so a couple things I want to just recommend, and obviously I work with your office consistently on a regular basis, but I want to go on the record on a couple of things. One, are we taking in consideration making sure that we have families of victims of gun violence at the table? Because we're seeing this epidemic of homicides taking place, I meet a lot of mothers, fathers who have lost loved ones that feel like we're doing so much of criminal justice reform that their voices are lost in this process. And so beginning stepping up our efforts to make sure that when we talk about the issue of homicide and gun violence, that they have a strategic and partnering role in how we address this issue of gun violence here in the city of Philadelphia. And when we move forward, I want to see how we can collaborate more with the district attorney's office around the issue of being proactive. Like for instance, in my district most recently, they had a job and career resource fair. And actually, when you're there, you see basically guys that just came home or guys who have records that's trying to do the right thing, right? And I just think, and y'all could be doing it, but if there's a collaboration with all the great resources we have on the city side, with the DA's office, I think we can take it to the next level. So hopefully these guys don't pick up a gun in the first place when they come looking for resources. Those are just two key areas that hopefully we can pay attention to, and we probably are, and you can elaborate on it if we are, but I want to be supportive and taking it to the next level. And my other recommendations, because I know we talk about, well, if we have additional funding, then how are we going to spend down in the right areas? Philadelphia Futures is an excellent program. Hire young men who have records, give them a pathway to work here in the city of Philadelphia. You know, if I was in a strategic position, I would probably hire 1,000 young men and say, listen, if you want a job, get off the corner, come down here. I want to make sure your urine clean. Well, we got work, but yeah, right? Make sure your urine clean. We'll hire you, right, to do the quality of life issues similar to what Councilwoman Cheryl Parker is talking about. For me, Philadelphia Futures initially had young men under another administration cleaning alleyways. Now, if you live in neighborhoods like Point Breeze, Grays Ferries, we don't have the driveways yet, but our alleys are atrocious, right? And they're a public safety hazard. And at one time, the young men would go through, clean the alleyways. They would clean the alleyways, and then the streets department would come and change the light bulbs, right? That's like a no-brainer public works project that will improve the quality of life of the city of Philadelphia. But most importantly, we don't want to have that incident where if that fire does happen and that person can't get out the front and they have to go through the alleyway and something happens that we all may not want to see. This is a way to be proactive, but also get young people involved. Those are just a couple of things. And last, I'm a real big advocate of, and Senator Hughes just did it, and I think we gave some additional funding, that year-round youth employment program. We're talking about poverty, right? Again, statistics shows areas where there's high crime, high violence. I mean, areas where there's poverty, there's high crime and high violence. Some individuals just need to be taken off the streets, period, right? But some individuals say, well, if I'm working all day, by the time I get home, I'm tired. I don't even want to stand on the corner, right? I don't have to sell drugs to feed my family, right? And those are the real life stories that we hear out in the street. And so those are just some of my recommendations. Look, I look at you as an ally, and so you'll have my continuous support. Same thing with your team, because at the end of the day, we're never going to be that great city that we think we are until we get to the bottom of addressing the issue of youth gun violence. And so thank you for your hard work and your tenacity and your dedication to the position that you inherited.
Thank you. And just by way of brief response, certainly agree with the points that you made. The clean and seal, we asked for money in this transfer ordinance for additional clean and seal crews for L&I as well as additional crews for CLIP. some of the work that they will be doing is exactly what you said, which is cleaning the overgrown lots that you see. Clean and Seal will be sealing up those abandoned buildings to make sure they're not being used for criminal activity, but it will also improve what the environment of the neighborhoods look like. But they are hiring people from the community who have records, the majority of them, or have what we call lived experience, in an effort to put some economic turn back into the community, but also that these folks will take pride, hopefully, in the work that they do when they see it in their own community. So we have tried to incorporate that, and that is one of the budget acts. Also, we also have an act in this transfer budget for additional money for streets, for lighting. So specifically, we recognize that there are some areas of the city that are a little too dark and that may breed some of the more violent behavior in certain areas, but also to do some of what you just said. And all of these things will work together.
I want to push just a little bit. So I know there is a recommendation for CLIP, and I have that in my notes, but how many people are actually being hired under the CLIP program? Give me a number.
I believe, is Tommy still here? I think he's here, but I think a crew. Typically, we just hired almost 20 under a CLIP program. Now, we asked for additional funding for additional 2 crews, and so not sure, but think the numbers would be somewhere around that same number. And also for a supervisor and what they call an inspector that has to be able to do the work. Oh, Joanne is here. Okay. CLIP falls under Community Affairs.
Good afternoon, Joanna Otero Cruz, Deputy Managing Director of Community Services, and I just want to, you were getting me the right numbers. It's about, we've already hired 19, and is another, I believe 16 positions it would be.
So 19.
And we have 36% of our staff that are those individuals who are formerly incarcerated within the unit of CLIP.
So I think that's great. I'm always pushing for more. I know we got a $430 million surplus, right? And so again, let's take that 19, let's take that 20 to 40, 60, right? Because we are in a crisis right now. This is a rainy day. Anytime you get on one day a 10-year-old shot in the head, and then the next day, you know, a 11-year-old shot inside a household, and then 2 weeks earlier, toddlers, you know, being murdered in the streets of Philadelphia. To me, I think it's time for bold action, you know, with all due respect. And bold action just based upon looking at the resources that we have and putting an investment in there. I remember as a student learning about FDR as a kid, right? And he started his public works project, right? That's because we were coming out of depression. And he said, okay, the only way we're going to rise out of this depression is put people back to work, and made bold investments when it came around rising people out of poverty. And so again, I'm an ally, but at the same time, I have a responsibility for that mother who calls me in the middle of the night saying, Councilman, can you come and either talk to my young son who's having problems getting employment, or who's in the street life, or to that mother who says, can you come and speak to at my son's funeral because he just lost his life to some senseless act of gun violence. And I know it's not one particular method that's going to address it, but I do believe in giving people as much opportunities as possible to steer them in the right way. And so again, I'm an ally, but at the same time, I'm gonna do my job to be supportive and at the same time agitate to make sure we're doing everything possible on behalf of the taxpayers here in the city of Philadelphia to address this issue of youth gun violence.
Understood, Councilman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, I think to the councilman's point, I know everybody's working really, really hard. We also want to work smart and I think leverage the investments. And I want to highlight that these are not expenses. These are investment in people, and they're hugely important. So thank you. Thank you, Vanessa, for all your work. And as we move forward, we look forward to continuing to work with you. Lastly, I wanted to get an update around the street cleaning. Is anybody here from streets? The street pilot. If I don't ask this, we're going to get slammed about it. Everybody's cheat sheet, everybody's giving. Just an update on the pilot. Were we on point on what we thought we were going to invest, and how are we working to expand that?
Well, right now we're looking to expand.
Put your name on the record.
Christopher Newman, I'm Deputy Commissioner for Administration for the Streets Department.
Councilwoman, we're looking to expand the pilot to add 75 more temporary workers this fiscal year, which is part of the ask for the transfer ordinance. So it would expand beyond the pilot areas that we actually have right now based on the litter index. So any place that we haven't gotten to where the litter index suggests we should go, once we get these additional temporary positions, we'll be going to those areas and doing more street cleaning in those areas.
Okay. Yeah, and let's make sure we leverage some of the commercial street cleaning stuff to better target, some of this, this investment. Okay.
Sure.
I know we're getting a lot of pushback about the blow stuff. Can you speak to what you've learned?
So we're looking at other ways of doing it. I know we're working with the Office of Fleet Management to look into vehicles that allow us to blow water, high-pressure water into the streets as opposed to the blowbacks. Hopefully we'll be able to do that going forward. The individuals that we're going to be hiring in this fiscal year, those 75 temporary workers, would be primarily doing manual work, not using necessarily blowers to do that job.
Okay.
They would be supported by mechanical brooms. We would be moving the trash into the streets, and the brooms would come down and get the trash as they go by.
So one of the things as we prepare for next year is we got the short dumping situation is we really do got to look at bulk trash again, right? I know
Yes.
that we have the deposit centers. I think this council is going to be looking at, what do we do around this bulk trash and going back to some of the programs that we had eliminated during the budget shortfall. So we want you to start planning and give us a plan.
We are. We're looking to staff up on bulk trash. We're looking for ways to do that. Of course, we're not really resourced to do that significantly right now, but we're looking for ways that we can use our additional resources, our current resources, to add staff to do that work.
So plan for what you need, not for what you have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we look forward to that. That's a big
Will do.
issue for the city, and I think the data speaks to itself, the correlation between blight, trash, crime. I mean, it's just there, so those investments, and again, this is the right time to begin to look at how do we staff up the department to be able to do those things.
Agreed.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Councilman Dom wanted to ask a question to the prison commissioner, and then we're going to go to the animal control piece. If anybody has anything else.
Good afternoon, thanks for being here. And I just had a quick question. I noticed that you're looking for a $14 million transfer for the prison department. I believe it's for the Hep C treatment. And the notes that I read, I think the commentary was that 10% of our prison population has Hep C. And I think this was required because of a state going to sue us or something if we don't deal with this issue. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's accurate. Blanche Carney, Prisons Commissioner. Yes, sir.
Okay, and so then my next question is, when I look at the overall budget of the prison system, it looks like with fringe benefits included, we're still at about $359 million. And my question, and maybe for you, Marissa, more so than the commissioner, is that, and welcome to this new position, by the way. Is there a way to look at this? Because if maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was costing us $47,000 per inmate. We've had a tremendous reduction. We were told that with the closing of the House of Corrections, the budget would change pretty dramatically. But when you do the math, based on the current population, which today I think is like 4880,
That's correct.
it comes out to 73,500 versus the 47. And then when you layer in the Hep C treatment for 5% of that, 10% of that population, it's almost costing us 103,500 for those people on State Road that have Hep C. And I understand the Hep C issue, but I'm just wondering, is there a way for you to, in the next few months, take a deep dive into this and see, are there areas where we could save some serious money?
Absolutely, we can have Marissa Waxman, Budget Director. We can absolutely get more detail for you about what are the fixed costs that stay the same even when the population changes versus what has changed with the population changes.
Because that delta of 47,000 a few years ago versus 73.5 today, not even including the Hep C, seems to me like we might be able to not get it to 47, but maybe we can get it to 55 or 60.
Yeah, we can absolutely look into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just, for the record, Commissioner, Police Commissioner, Police Commissioner.
The police commissioner?
And prisons.
Prisons? Oh, okay.
Sorry,
I'm
prisons.
sorry.
I just wanted to, for the benefit of the listening public, because with all of the tragic violence that has occurred in the city of Philadelphia, when we think about our local prison population, I mean, we live in this world, so we hear these numbers quite often. Could you tell us about our population here in the city of Philadelphia, our prison population? What is the total number?
The total number, thank you, Councilwoman. The total number in our census is 4,880.
4,888. Tell us where we were prior to the closing.
So prior to the closing, we were averaging about 6,500 inmates. We realized significant savings when we closed the House of Corrections. Some of the early onset of those significant cost savings were as a result of closing an entire facility. In order to get back to those numbers of closing of savings, you have to close an entire facility, further reduce the population to around 4,500, 4,000 folks. Given that we still have fixed costs with contracts for food, health care, the folks that are in custody now, we've really realized the efforts of the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge, where those low-level folks have transitioned out. There are significant diversion initiatives underway, but the folks that are in custody are now those medium to high-risk folks that are going to be with us longer. Also, we're looking at a 6% vacancy rate. Last year, I did not onboard any correctional classes. We saved significant monies. We put in place new initiatives to address and reduce overtime. We've done that. And I think at this point, we're leveling out. We have that 6%, but we are going to need to fill those vacancies, or we'll revert back to increased overtime costs to cover available post and leave usage in the department. And we also have an update on, joining me is Deputy Commissioner Xavier Buford for Administration and my Budget Director, Gerald Buck.
Okay, Gerald Buck, Administrative Services Director. Our costs per inmate per day is $77 per day. And maybe we can get together and figure out what our differences are.
Are you counting the fringe benefits?
I'm counting fringe benefits, indirect costs.
I have 238 million for the budget and 121 million for fringe. That's where the number came from. I'm happy to meet with you outside of here.
Oh, yeah, sounds good.
Well, thank you. I will be really happy to hear you all reconcile those numbers. Commissioner, I want you to talk to us, if you will, about this Hep C crisis that we are seeing. Let's just think about this. Because of our efforts to reduce the population, and we've been very aggressive at our local prison reform, we are rewarded. Our innovation, our partnership, our hard work is rewarded with the MacArthur grant. But at the same time, with our efforts to attempt to reduce the population, in my opinion, we can't in any way, shape, or form reduce access to treatment, particularly those for Hep C or any other chronic diseases or illnesses, because these are men and women who are leaving these prisons and they're coming back home to our communities. So if we're going to be penny wise and pound foolish relative to giving people access to the treatment that they need while they're inside, we as a city could be required to pay more in the end when we haven't ensured that these prisoners get access to the health care treatment that they need. So talk to me, if you will, about what that process is like and ensuring that they're getting access to the medical treatment that is needed, to ensure that they're not transmitting these diseases, particularly when they're released and they come back home. And we're trying to say, hey, we're going to work with you in reentry and coming back to our neighborhoods, but while you were in prison, we didn't give you access to the medical care that you needed. I hope I just made sense to you.
So this is very important. Prisons is not one-faceted. It's a multifaceted department where we're addressing behavioral health, illness burdens such as Hep C treatment. This department is a holistic department. We're not just detaining folks and keeping them in a secure environment, but these are the same folks that are in these poverty communities that have lack to access of health care benefits, and then are surmounted with the barriers with the criminal justice background. So once they are committed into our custody, we want to make sure that we're addressing the issues that are presented. Healthcare is not cheap if you do it correctly. We understand that as folks are coming in, if we're diagnosing them and they're presenting as Hep C, the right thing to do is to provide the treatment while they're here. The right thing is to fill in those interventions where people that have for a long time have had chronic care conditions have not been addressed. We're a 24-hour operation. We don't have the luxury to wait and see. We've done a lot of innovative things. We've instituted medication-assisted treatment. Groundbreaking, it wasn't happening. We did it because we are a reentry partner in public safety. So the issues that are faced in those communities, for those folks that come in, MAT, we implemented it. This is the next step, is Hep C. If the person, we will start to test all folks at the time of admission, those that present and that will be in our care for the duration for us to implement that treatment, we're going to do that. Those folks that are currently incarcerated that present and are symptomatic, we're going to do that as well. So this is part of the continuum of care. As these folks release out, they would have received the treatment. We can also connect them. We're at 90% for medical assistance enrollment. Again, continuity of care. If we're going to do it right, it's best to do it on the front end versus the back end when you're getting into litigation. This is born out of this State Department of Corrections settlement where they're going to provide the Hep C treatment. We were already at the forefront and processing how we were going to implement it, and this was our best effort, rather than to be told and get into litigation. These are the same people that touch communities and touch departments in the city of Philadelphia. This is not just a separate group of people. So healthcare, we want to make sure we're providing those folks for the duration that they're with us so we can decrease Hep C reinfection and get people on a continuum of health that once they release out, they return to the communities. They can get involved in some of these jobs that we're talking about. And that's what we're committed to at the city's prisons.
Well, Commissioner Carney, I just want to say a special thank you to you and your team. I want to join Councilman Dom, Councilman Johnson, and Madam Chairwoman Quinones Sanchez. Your work is not easy. It is tough work, and it requires a certain amount of tenacity and stick-to-itiveness and innovation and patience and partnership and every challenge that has come up within your department. I don't care if it's been an article in a newspaper or a challenge that we're hearing from our constituents. Whenever we bring those issues to you, you address them head on. Even if we don't like the answer, sometimes you address them. And I want to say to you and your team, thank you for the record.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Real quickly, because I know you said it a little bit on your testimony, what other things you think we could be doing to ensure some of the reimbursements? I mean, this is a prison that now becomes a medical facility, a behavioral health facility, all the other things as you're mentioning. How are we doing on the reimbursement piece as it relates to Medicaid and other places?
And we do, we're doing well, but we can also do better. There's always room. Joining me today is Dr. Bruce Herdman, my Chief Medical Officer. He works closely, Dr. Herdman? Closely to make sure that we're able to get all of our reimbursements, but it is a tedious process. It's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on, so I want him to join us just to walk us through
for that in the interest of time.
These are big investments, and I'm particularly interested as I watch the state talk about their investments in some of these areas and making sure that if there are any bureaucratic roadblocks to our ability to enhance these services around, particularly around the opioid stuff and some of the other stuff. So how are we doing? What could we be doing if there's one or two regulatory issues with the state that we need to address to ensure full reimbursement for that?
Bruce Herdman, Chief of Medical Operations for the prison. Councilwoman, the federal law prohibits the use of federal funds for paying for health care for people that are incarcerated unless they're in the federal system. So, however, we do have some mechanisms where we can take advantage of medical assistance. So, for example, we are the largest distributor of Narcan kits in the city, and those kits are provided to us in bulk. We actually give the kit to these are high-risk opioid use disorder patients after they've technically been released from the prison, but before they leave the campus, which allows the pharmacy to bill medical assistance. So we're working on mechanisms like that to get around the federal prohibition. We're hopeful to do that with Sublocade, for example, which is the 30-day injectable of Suboxone.
Right.
Those are the principal efforts at the moment. But to be more specific to the other councilwoman's comment, we complete our medical evaluations within 4 hours of the time the person gets off the bus. That includes the drawing blood for STDs, for hepatitis C, urinalysis, and so forth. So we start those treatments immediately because, as you said, as a public health agency, we can prevent, not only help the individual, but prevent them from reinfecting people in the community.
So we're very much interested in it, particularly as people transition back, and we appreciate all of the workarounds. But we also want to get to a point where if there are regulatory challenges at the state, as they are in the federal, that we call folks out, right? To have the federal government say this opioid stuff is a crisis, but then that does not provide the resources for us to take care of people when we have them, right? What better way to treat people than while they got nowhere else to go, right? That we could do that, and unfortunately, that wasn't what the original intent is, but is where we've moved as we move in that, and that's definitely an area that we want to make sure that our federal and state partners invest in also.
There may well be an opportunity, although the state's been very helpful in terms of helping us to enroll people in medical assistance. We had an 8% enrollment rate 5 years ago, and now it's over 90%. The state reduced the application from 24 pages to 1 for corrections, so they've been very instrumental there. We are going to run into some problems in terms of automating the reactivation of coverage, and we may ask for your assistance with that.
Yeah, we look forward to doing that. A personal family experience, someone came out of jail after 10 years on a Thursday, and he overdosed on a Saturday. So, again, it's the burden that we all shoulder. It wasn't part of the initial job. So I'm going to pay particular interest in that, about what else we could be doing at the prison. And the form of education, right, that folks who were incarcerated, who are coming out, the drugs in the street today are not the drugs that they knew before they went in. And I'm seeing that uptick, and again, it was a personal experience. And as much as the mother does what the mother did, which is warned, you're out, please don't do that, in less than 48 hours. He was dead of an overdose, so very tragic.
Councilwoman, we also take advantage of the citizens that come to visit the prisoners while they're there. We're also running the Narcan videos to educate the public. We work collectively with other city agencies that wish to have PSAs run on the closed-circuit TV system. So while they're waiting there, they're getting information that they may not have had access to. Where to go for support, where to go for housing, jobs. We've partnered as part of the public safety cluster. And as Deputy Managing Director Vanessa Garrett-Harley stated, part of that group is we are that partner that we can also run that information. So as a mother or grandmother sitting in one of our waiting areas, they have access to information as well, and hopefully those employment opportunities.
Again, thank you. I know for the police department, they are now homeless prevention experts, the fire department, like all of our uniform. We really thank you during this opioid crisis in particular, on the ground, the work that has to happen, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Council.
All right, we are going to move, we have a panel of, I don't know if folks are still here to move on with the animal control. I don't know if Councilman Dom wants to say something before we get started. I know I have some written testimony here. Marsha Perlman, Azita Kay, Dr. Beth Mahaffey, and Ian Griffiths. Ian Griffiths, yeah. Councilman Dom, you want to open up, please?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair.
And I think Councilman Heenan also wanted to weigh in.
I wanted to speak about the monies that are needed at ACT, and thank you all the ACT volunteers for being here today and supporters. As elected officials, we have the duty and responsibility to provide essential services that benefit all Philadelphians. And the same goes for animals and pets in our city's care. And as part of this city's mid-year appropriation transfer, I had requested $480,790 to be directed to ACT Philly to hire additional veterinarian staff that are needed to care for the animals currently at the facility. My initial funding request was not included in the $70 million appropriation that is being requested today. My request was less than 1% of the total appropriation. Not only did this not make any sense, it's completely unacceptable that the city would not provide adequate funding that is essential to saving animals' lives and allowing our staff to work in better conditions. As such, I introduced a separate bill which is captured in today's amendment requesting the needed funding. We have many priorities to address in our city. We've heard many of them today, such as the elevated crime, homelessness, and poverty. And it's important for the city to utilize the funding transfer to address these issues and many more. However, we cannot turn a blind eye to the inadequate conditions at our animal care and control facility in Hunting Park. A first-class city like Philadelphia needs to have a first-class animal shelter. If the city isn't going to take actions to help save animals, then we as city council members have an obligation to all Philadelphians to take the necessary steps. My colleagues, Councilman Bobby Heenan and Mark Squilla, and all my colleagues on council, I want to commend them for their efforts over the years to provide funding for ACT Philly. We need to continue this movement and take aggressive measures. I commend all the volunteers and thank you so much for your patience today and dedication and helping us to save animals' lives every day. You guys are all amazing. Thankfully, we'll have volunteers around the city who rescue animals, foster and help maintain the ACT facility, and I especially applaud those who joined us here today to show their support for ACT Philly. Your voices do matter. I encourage all my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill to provide more money for ACT Philly. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you.
Okay, you want to start, Marsha?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Quinones Sanchez and fellow members of the committee. I'm Marsha Perlman, and I'm here to testify in support of this amendment. Since serving as acting president and CEO of the Philadelphia Zoo, I've been a member of the boards of the two largest animal welfare organizations in the country, previously serving as the chair of the board of the ASPCA and currently serving on the board of the Humane Society of the United States. I'm also a member of the Pennsylvania Dog Law Advisory Board. Most recently, I joined the board of ACT Philly, and I'm here today to urge each of you to accept this amendment to provide critical funding to ACT, by far Philadelphia's largest open intake shelter and the only shelter in Philadelphia that provides animal control services to the city. As you all know, not long after the most recent budget for ACT was passed in spring of this year, ACT faced a crisis due to the outbreak of a viral respiratory disease. This resulted in ACT being unable to provide the critical community services it normally provides, leaving many Philadelphia citizens with nowhere to turn. Staff worked around the clock for an unsustainable number of hours. The city had to spend tens of thousands of dollars to construct and operate temporary facilities, and many dogs lost their lives. This outbreak of disease was the third such outbreak in several years, though make no mistake, ACT every day makes animals sick. Healthy dogs come into ACT, healthy cats come into ACT, and only a matter of days later, they have pneumonia because of the conditions that currently exist there. But this outbreak was remarkably severe, and it underscored the need to not only improve our facilities for the animals in our care, but for the humans providing that care as well. That crisis is one that ACT is determined to never let happen again. Two recent developments have happened to allow us to make major advances toward that goal. First, we have hired Aurora Velasquez, a highly experienced and well-respected leader in animal sheltering. And second, we have gotten the city's assurance that ACT will finally be able to expand into the much-needed space currently occupied by Vector Services in its building on West Hunting Park Avenue no later than March of 2020. These are two critical steps in starting to significantly improve working conditions for over 80 ACT employees and the health and welfare of the 18,000 animals that ACT takes in each year in compliance with its contract with the City of Philadelphia. Since that outbreak, we have had the benefit of several pro bono consulting arrangements from national shelter experts. Without exception, they advised us to bolster intake prevention programs by reducing the number of animals coming into the shelter. This can be done by providing resources and support to pet owners in emergency situations who wish to retain their animals but are afraid they cannot, and by slowing the growth of the city's unowned or community cat population. Second, they required us to acquire more space in which to perform the services required by ACT, most importantly by providing isolation areas to animals suspected of harboring disease. And finally, they've asked us to significantly enhance the medical services provided to the animals in our care. In order to accomplish these three objectives, we are submitting this request today, which addresses ACT's most urgent needs: funding for intake prevention programs, funding for equipment and technical upgrades so that we can begin to use the Vector space as soon as it becomes available, and funding for additional medical support staff and training. Intake prevention programs play a crucial role in decreasing the risk of disease. One of the causes of the outbreak that ACT experienced last spring was that too many animals were given to ACT for the capacity that ACT had at that point to care for them. Each of the national shelter experts recommended ensuring a continuation of the Philadelphia No-Kill Coalition Community Help Desk, a resource for owners who wish to keep their pets but are being forced by personal circumstances to surrender them. In the first 16 months of operation, this desk realized a 66% success rate by giving families the resources they needed to retain over 2,000 pets that would otherwise have been given to ACT. On an annualized basis, this relatively inexpensive program alone can reduce ACT's intake by almost 10%. Additionally, this amendment would allow ACT to support a much-needed trap, neuter, and return program to address the city's growing population of unowned or community cats. If you live in Philadelphia, you've likely seen stray and community cats throughout our neighborhoods. In 2018, ACT took in over 7,500 such cats, almost 40% of the animals it handled. Performing more trap, neuter, and return services, as strongly recommended by the assessments of veterinary experts at Cornell University and the University of Wisconsin Shelter Medicine Program, will help to decrease the number of cats roaming Philadelphia's streets and entering the shelter in the future. This funding requested today will enable ACT to spay and neuter more than 2,200 cats, which will prevent the births of literally thousands of kittens every year going forward. Further, this amendment would provide equipment and supplies such as isolation cages, which will finally allow for dogs and cats symptomatic of disease to be isolated from the general population. While the optimal use of the Vector space will require eventually some capital improvements, in the short term that space can easily be outfitted with the necessary equipment and technology to decrease disease transmission and increase the standard of medical care provided to animals at ACT. Achieving these objectives will reduce the amount of time animals spend there and improve the working environment for all of ACT's employees. Finally, this amendment will allow for the hiring of medical support staff who can take care of many of the medical needs of ACT's animals that can be administered without using the time of a trained veterinarian.
When community services are properly supported and provided, and sufficient space is provided to act to properly care for the animals brought into it, crises like that which occurred this past summer should not occur. Accepting this amendment, the amount of which comprises well under 1% of the entire amount of the bill that you are considering today, will be monumental in improving conditions at ACT for both the people who work there and the animals who live there for years to come. Thank you very much for your time.
I've never felt so short. And I want to apologize if I mispronounce anything or if I addressed the wrong way. Okay, my name is Azita Kay. I'm the founder and president of the Pod Forward Foundation. We're a local rescue, as well as we provide medical funding for other local rescues that need help with their pets. Dear Chairperson Quino Sanchez and everyone else on the board, I'm here to support the amendment to the bill 190856. The reason I'm here, I was actually here 4 years ago, sitting here actually asking everyone not to fund any money to ACT, because the administration at the time and the board were just, on another planet, if that makes sense, and we're not supporting them. And today I'm actually sitting here in support and actually seeing hope and light that everyone is moving in the right direction, and we want the rescue community to actually support the new administration and actually members of the board that are really having a positive impact on what's going on at ACT. We've pulled dogs from there for the past 7 years, and this year, with the disease that took place in April, we're actually in jeopardy of no longer being able to help any more animals. We've spent $23,000 alone, our rescue, for 7 dogs. And just speaking to about 5 other rescues, the bills have gone up to $200,000 alone with these rescues. And these rescues are no longer able to help ACT. They're not going to be able to go in there and pull those dogs that need the help because we don't have the finances anymore. The reason why we're here to support Congressman Dom and everyone, or Councilman Dom and everyone else, Congress, that could be a good thing too, is because again, this is such a great step in the right direction. It's not only money that is going to help with medical care, that's going to bring ACT to almost providing basic care. It's going to bring ACT to a level that's going to provide humane care for these animals while they're there. I don't think anyone here is asking for money to bring in this huge medical director that is a thought leader. No one is asking for that. They're asking for actual vets to come in here and help the animals. No one is asking for these miraculous things to happen. The Cornell report stated that with a size of intake of 18,000 animals, there should be at least 3 to 4 full-time vets on board. I believe you guys are only asking for 2 vets. For 2 vets. No one's even asking for the 3 or 4. They're asking for 2 vets to provide care, basic care, so that these dogs, when they're coming in, or these cats, are just actually surviving their stay at ACT and not getting sick. And then the other part of this is also spay and neuter. The number one thing with animal control is to control the population. And if you do not have vets there to provide spay and neuter services, and you're releasing animals that are not spayed and neutered, this is a major problem, and this is really, we should be ashamed of ourselves in this city for doing this right now, and we really need to get back on track to the basics. So I hope I'm not sounding negative. I hope it makes sense that 4 years ago I was here saying absolutely do not fund anything that goes into ACT, and now I'm a person that's sitting here, supporting the board and also supporting the new administration and saying it's going to make a difference, but we really need to get things to even just basic humane care there, and we're not there.
We appreciate your testimony.
So I hope thank you.
And thank you, duly noted. I know Councilman Kenyatta Johnson with Sasha, Councilman Jones with Captain Dan, and my own Norman. I think you got some allies here, right?
Yeah, I have introduced several bills. One is an ordinance that says if you leave your dog outside in extreme cold or extreme heat, then you could be fined here in the city of Philadelphia, and also tethering bill. In other words,
Yes.
when you tie the dog up. And so I'm a dog lover. I think
Thank you
this is like a
for doing
no-brainer.
that.
It's a no-brainer if you ask me. So I can't speak to why we even have to go this route at the end of the day. So I commend Councilman Dime. And
Are we
I'm
allowed to
supportive.
clap or no?
Yeah, you can clap. Yeah,
Okay.
you can clap. That's cool. I'm
I don't
The
know
supportive.
fact
that's
that I know
allowed.
his dog's name
Yeah, she knows,
and I
'cause
know
we-
Councilman
this is
Jones'
something that we
dog
care
name,
about,
I'm
so-
telling you.
So we get it.
We
You
get it.
know,
Thank you.
We're on board.
Thank you.
Ian?
Chairwoman Quinona Sanchez, my name's Ian Griffiths. I'm a volunteer at ACT. I'm here to support Bill number 190856. I just wanted to give you a little bit of data from the 15 largest cities in the United States. At the moment, ACT comes in right at the bottom at number 15 in dollars per animal. The top four spend quite a lot of money in their animal welfare budgets. Number one is Washington, D.C., which spends $1,370 per animal, $13 million budget. Number two is San Diego. They spend $965 per animal with a $28 million budget. Number three is our neighbor up north, New York City, $954 per animal spent. And number four is Miami-Dade County. They spend $930 per animal with a $27 million budget. And even if you go down to our neighbor down the south in Baltimore, which has a slightly higher poverty rate than Philadelphia, they come in number 7 in the nation at they spend $460 per animal. ACT is all the way down at number 15, and they spend only $230 per animal, half of what Baltimore does. So that incredibly low level of funding leads ACT management to, they're basically between a rock and a hard place. They have to choose between bad policy A and bad policy B. ACT hasn't had a full-time vet for almost a year due to the pathetically low salary it can afford to offer. So about 50% of the time during the week, there's no vet at ACT, and the other 50%, there's part-time vets there. So when an adopter adopts an unfixed dog and there's no vet there, ACT has and there's no vet there, or the next day there's going to be no vet, ACT has to make the choice of either letting that dog go unfixed with a voucher to PAWS or SPCA, or they hold that dog in the kennel for 3 or 4 more days until one of the part-time vets comes to work. Now, there's several adopters who are quite happy to not use the voucher. So at the moment but the equally bad policy is that if they keep that dog for another 3 days until a part-time vet shows up, then during that day, ACT will have intaked another 30 dogs, one of whom will definitely lose their life because that adopted dog's kennel won't have opened up. Now, like ACT, like the other 14 municipal shelters, has their intake prevention program where owners have a meeting with an intake prevention counsellor and given access to information and resources with the hope of keeping their dog. But in the other 14 municipal shelters, they have an average of 8 to 10 intake prevention counsellors working. So when I called up randomly about 7 or 8 of these places, I was told I could come in and see the counsellor that day, or I had to have an appointment for the next day or the day after. Now at ACT, this November, when owners showed up on November 1st to surrender their dog, they were told, oh, your appointment with the counsellor is November 30th, 1 month after the fact. Now, it's 200 owners a month hear that and walk out. Now, they don't count in the ACT statistics where it says we've got a 90% live release rate. They aren't counted in any statistical category. You can't quantify what happens to those dogs, so no one cares about them. Now, the alternative is bad policy B. If you take those 150 to 200 dogs in, half of them would go straight to the euthanasia room and have their lives ended. Now, the managing director
a couple of months ago claimed that ACT is underfunded compared to other cities, but it's no more underfunded than any other city department. But that's simply not true. Philadelphia spends 50% of the Washington, D.C. school budget per pupil, but it spends only 18% of the D.C. budget for animal care per animal. And Philadelphia spends 74% of the New York City school budget per pupil, but spends only 24% of the New York City budget on animal care per animal. So ACT is 3 times more underfunded than the school district. And the bar in Philadelphia for animal welfare is set so low that all animal welfare advocates want is that the animals in Philadelphia be treated as well as the animals in Baltimore, a city with a higher poverty rate. Baltimore spends double the amount per animal than ACT, $460 per animal versus $230. And also in 2 months, it's moving into a brand new state-of-the-art building near their baseball stadium, which is twice the size of ACT, but they only take in half the number of animals. So it's twice the size for half the animals. The saddest part about this is that their current building, which was deemed by the city of Baltimore to be not good enough for their animals, is about to be demolished. But if that building was somehow magically transported up 95 and dropped down into the Navy Yard or somewhere on Delaware Avenue, then animal welfare advocates in the city would throw a party. I've been to that building, and it's 1,000,000 times better than the building where ACT is at present. So their building, current building, not good enough for the animals of Baltimore, but will be a major improvement for the animals of Philadelphia. It's not having any political experience ever, it's very hard to reconcile the difference in the treatment that the animals get here and compared to Baltimore. If every council person could make an unscheduled visit to ACT and see the facility, then I feel that ACT's chronic underfunding wouldn't be allowed to continue. And since a lot of the commenters today have been talking about jobs, I've been volunteering at ACT for 4 years, and in that time, it's never, ever had a full staffing at ACT. And their jobs pay, their entry-level jobs pay over $13 an hour. And they always have between 10 and 40 job vacancies. So, you know, if you know people who want to work and they need entry-level jobs, I don't know how many entry-level jobs in Philadelphia are paying that much, but they're paying, I think, $13.25 to start.
Thank you, Ian, for your advocacy. Thank all of you on the panel for your advocacy. We appreciate it as there's a commitment on our behalf. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to have Mr. Craig Martin come in real quickly from the Sheriff's Office, and then Marissa, so we can close out. You had something to add, Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, we good. Let's keep this thing.
Mr. Craig Martin, I had asked a question, I posed a question to the independent offices about the transition and how these, the budget allocations were going to help in that transition, if there was a plan from the Sheriff's Office and the other departments. So I just wanted to get on the record what, if anything, we're doing as you transition.
Yes, Craig Martin from the Sheriff's Office. I'm the budget officer. Good afternoon. The request was for $3,006,000. Most of it was due to overtime. The Sheriff's Office has suffered from overtime tremendously. There is a plan. In the past, the Sheriff had a problem hiring because we didn't have our own hiring list. This last fiscal year, we were granted that. The Sheriff's Office was able to interview a series of candidates. We do have a lot on the docket. Some will be hired, some have actually been hired and will be put into place this budgetary quarter coming. The plan is to direct those employees to the shortages that we have in Family Court, City Hall, the Widener Building, and the Bike Unit. Now, we intend to hire 41 deputy officers this fiscal period and another 30 next budgetary period for City Hall here.
for all the administrative offices here and the courts here. The big issue is the interviewing process. A lot of them, we do turn down a lot based on the number that we get, so we have to interview a lot. Then it's the issue of the time it takes to get a person from a hire to a functioning deputy, which is about a good 6 months. But the process is on the way. We do see overtime actually going down this next quarter, at least by 10 to 12%, and going down each quarter percentage-wise based on how we bring them in. We bring them in and move them in to the areas where we have shortage, and we do anticipate that the overtime will decrease and go down.
Any questions from this panel? Thank you. We'll be looking for...
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. So, all right, we're doing this transfer ordinance now. You're hiring all these individuals. How does that play into the transition with the new person that's coming in? Just trying to give me an idea, because like we're doing this ramp up in hiring,
Right.
then you got a new leadership team that's going to come in. Explain that to me. Just
well-
give me an idea how that works.
That's a good question. Law enforcement in the sheriff's office will not change. The law enforcement needs are the needs. The new leader will come in with their goals and objectives and a new plan, hopefully. But the need is still there for the deputy sheriff's officers. That's why we had a problem with the overtime, because we were like 41 deputies short.
Okay.
And the new person coming in is going to need that because there are new needs for City Hall, new needs for the court, new needs for CJC, and they have to be covered. Any other programming will still be affected by the needs of law enforcement.
And one last thing, and I'll wrap up because I know we have to keep it moving. And I guess this will be for the new administration, but nevertheless, the hiring issue, right? And I mean, like on a regular, constituents who work for the House of Corrections, who's always, not House of Corrections, but the prison system,
Right.
who's always trying to make that transition over into the sheriff's department, right?
Right.
And so, obviously, she can't let but so, Commissioner Blanche can't let but so many people go, because she got to maintain her workforce personnel,
Okay.
right? And so, I guess I would want to see what the plan and the strategy is. Like, I don't think I've seen a sheriff's department hiring fair recently. Maybe.
Well,
like,
are you speaking of the strategy of getting people from the prisons to the sheriff's office?
or people just hired in general? Yeah.
Well, actually, the problem with the strategy has been not to have the proper list. And getting people that are already employed, say like the prisons, into the sheriff's office is a slow process because they have to be willing to give these people up. The sheriff's office still wants to hire those people because they come with experience. But now that the floodgates have opened in terms of being able to do the testing for the sheriff's office and bring in a lump of hirings that are basically directed to the sheriff's office, that gives the sheriff's office more people to interview for the job. And we've seen the floodgates open up, and we've had a lot to interview. We're interviewing now. As I said, we hope to hire the 41 by the end of this fiscal period, and then hire another 30 for City Hall. I can't speak as to how the plans will be made by the incoming chief.
It's cool. I just want to get an idea.
All I can say is, as the budget person, like, to crunch the numbers, keep them right, and make sure that I have answers for her when she asks them.
Okay.
And let her take it from there.
Well, we thank you for coming over at our request. We appreciate that. Marissa, real quickly, so we can put on the record the explanation of the amendment, and then we'll go to the public meeting and take the vote. So in the amendment that's been circulated to the committee for Bill 190856, there are a couple of items: $250,000 for the Cultural Fund as requested in a program activity from Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown. There's the $488,000 for animal control as presented by Councilman Dom. And there's a $25 million to the finance for what we consider a deposit to the poverty plan. Anything you want to add as it relates to this, or particularly comment on this as we go into the meeting?
Sure, thank you very much. I wanted to say that obviously the Kenny administration shares with council a real commitment to figuring out what are the right ways we can address poverty, evidence-based approaches that are really going to move the needle, because that is something that we know Philadelphia has a persistent high rate of poverty. So we understand putting that funding in there, and we look forward to working with the task force council has now to develop, what is the most effective use of those funds so that we have real shared solutions there. With regard to the funding for the animal care and control, the MDO is really interested in the administration at wide working with the management of ACCT to understand what is the spending plan for any additional funds, what outcomes those are going to achieve. The gentleman on the last panel testified about the currently funded positions that remain vacant, so how will those be addressed? So we look forward to continuing those conversations to understand where we can get to there. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. You got through your first one.
No cattywampus, nothing messed up.
So the public hearing has come to a close. We will now enter the Committee of Appropriations public meeting. The chair recognizes Vice Chair Kenyatta Johnson for a motion on the amendment to 190856.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that the amendment to Bill number 190856 be adopted. And seconded. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, the amendment to 190856 has been adopted. The chair recognizes Councilman Kenyatta Johnson for a motion on bill number 190856 as amended, 190854, 190855, and 190857.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that bill number 190856 as amended, 190854, 190855, and 190857 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
All those in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none, it has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 190856 as amended, 190854, 190855, 190857 be reported at this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at our next session. Thank you very much. This concludes our long afternoon. Thank you.